Chapter 36-41. Before Ji Tianxing ascended to the God realm, he had told the people around him that there were many God monarchs and God kings in the God realm who cultivated the power of faith. Under normal circumstances, they would cultivate their inner worlds or use some kind of divine weapon to create a world. They would create countless living beings in that world, and all of them would worship them. They would use that to gather the power of faith. This method could quickly increase one's strength without wasting a lot of time and energy. Many God monarchs and God kings favored this method. However, in the eyes of many orthodox cultivators of the divine way, this was an unorthodox method. Therefore, God monarchs and God kings who cultivated the power of faith were in the minority. However, Ji Tianxing knew that this was also a type of divine way that had been passed down since ancient times. It could not be considered an unorthodox method. Although he did not have any prejudice against this method, he did not have any intention of acknowledging it or cultivating it. Otherwise, he would have used the power of faith in the sword world long ago and created countless living beings. As for the five elements world, on the surface it seemed like billions of living beings were under his control and protection. However, in reality, he had only merged with the five elements world and did not make billions of living beings worship him. At this moment, Ji Tianxing mentioned the power of faith. Bai Feng was worried that he would reprimand, obstruct or deny it, so he hurriedly changed the topic. "Master, do you have any instructions for me?" Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said, "It's not really an instruction. I just want to ask you about something." "Ask me for advice?" Bai Feng was stunned and looked at him with a strange expression. He was in disbelief. In his opinion, Ji Tianxing was almost invincible, omniscient and omnipotent. How could he ask him for advice? "Don't look at me like that. I'm not omnipotent." Ji Tianxing saw through his thoughts and explained, "What I want to ask is the divination technique you are best at. Back in the boundless heaven continent, you helped those God envoys to find my location and traces." When this matter was mentioned, Bai Feng immediately became spirited and explained excitedly, "The reason why I could find your location across a few regions is because of my divine eye of annihilation. This is the inherited talent of my race and it happens to have this effect." Of course, using the divine eyes of annihilation to track a target wasn't something that could be used casually. Only by coming into contact with the target and planting a special divine aura in the target's body could the deduction be successful. "If you want me to track down a complete stranger, I won't be able to do it." After listening, Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said thoughtfully, "In that case, Tao Yongxing was able to track my location and traces, most likely using a similar method. Previously, when I fought with him, he must have left some kind of special divine power or clue in my body. However, when I was recuperating and cultivating in seclusion, I checked many times and didn't find any trace of his divine power. Not only his divine power, but even the four divine powers of the Taotai clan were nowhere to be found." Bai Feng also frowned, and after pondering over it for a moment, she spoke out in a grave tone, "Tao Yongxing is a 9th stage realm god king who has cultivated for over 20,000 years, and the depth of his cultivation and the profoundness of his methods are far above mine. But even so, his method of tracking you should be the same as mine. No matter if he used some kind of divine ability, innate talent, inheritance, or some kind of god relic, he must have left some clues in your body." Speaking of this, he paused for a moment and spoke out in a solemn tone, "Lord, I feel that there's a possibility that the divine power which Tao Yongxing left in your body might be extremely special. Not only is it extremely concealed, it doesn't belong to the Taotai clan, nor does it belong to his own power." Ji Tianxing nodded his head and said, "Amen, there's this possibility. Thank you for your analysis and reminder. I'll go back and do a thorough check. We must remove the clues which he left behind as soon as possible. Otherwise, he might keep on chasing after us like a lingering spirit." Saying that, Ji Tianqing left the third story's space. Bai Feng looked at his disappearing back view in the white light, and a smile appeared on her face. After some time later, he muttered to himself, "Previously I always thought that Kenshin was omniscient and omnipotent, high up in the air, and could only be looked up to. I'd not expected that Kenshin would also have times when he couldn't understand. He's not much different from ordinary god kings like us. This is good. When I interact with him in the future, I won't have to be on my guard or be on my guard." Unknowingly, Bai Feng's impression of Ji Tianqing had undergone a subtle change. In the past, he'd always thought that Kenshin was high up in the air, cold and aloof. He could only be looked up to and could not be approached. However, now he realized that Kenshin was also human. There was no need to deliberately keep a distance when interacting with him. Thinking about it this way, he suddenly felt that being a guard for the sword god was not something that was unacceptable. Ji Tianqing returned to the distorted space and sat cross-legged under the blood flame sacred tree. Thinking of Bai Feng's reaction just now, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Although I'm not good at tracking secret techniques, if Bai Feng can think of something, how can I not? In fact, he had already guessed the answer when he was cultivating in seclusion and breaking through to the 6th level of the God King realm. He had only used this as an excuse to intentionally interact with Bai Feng and let her see his flaws. He wasn't as perfect as she had imagined. This was the only way he could gradually eliminate the estrangement and wariness in Bai Feng's heart. Ji Tianqing knew very well that if he wanted to control an expert like Bai Feng, he would not be able to obtain her loyalty by merely using force and coercion. In his previous life, although he appeared cold on the surface, he was actually proficient in all kinds of controlling technique. Otherwise, he would not have so many followers and established such a huge force. To him, controlling Bai Feng was very easy and simple. Soon, he threw this small matter to the back of his mind and began to circulate his energy to inspect his body. Previously, when he was cultivating in seclusion, he had inspected his body many times. However, he did not find the 4 types of divine powers that the Taotai clan usually used. He also did not find Tao Yongxing's energy aura. Now that he had changed his mind, he began to inspect his body again. He did not let go of any trace of blood, flesh, tendons, bones, fingernails, or even hair on his head. As for his internal organs, sea of consciousness and Godhead, they were the focus of his inspection. Time passed quietly. A quarter of an hour, half an hour had passed. After 2 hours, he had inspected his body from inside out 10 times. He even checked every drop of blood in his body. In the end, he still did not find any abnormal energy or traces. I can confirm that there is nothing abnormal in my body. Then, where are the traces and clues that Tao Yongxing left behind? Ji Tianqing frowned and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, he thought of something and his eyes lit up. He quickly left the distorted space and flew out of the sword world. He appeared at the top of the sea of clouds. Chapter 36-42. Whoosh! It was noon and the sun was high in the sky. The Heaven Barrier sword was like a bolt of pitch-black lightning as it flew over a vast lake. Suddenly, Ji Tianqing flew out of the sword world and appeared beside it. Burial of Heaven, stop for a moment. He spoke to buried heaven through divine telekinesis voice transmission. Burial of Heaven didn't understand what was going on, so it quickly stopped and asked, "What's wrong?" Ji Tianqing reached out to hold the divine sword, glanced at the vast lake below, and landed in the lake. Whoosh! He dove into the rippling lake and dove down to the bottom of the lake, creating a temporary cave at the bottom of the lake. After using 2 formations to seal the cave, he took out the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Pagoda and entered the distorted space-time with the Burial of Heaven. After a while, he returned to the blood flame sacred tree, holding the Burial of Heaven with both hands and carefully observing it. Burial of Heaven, when I fought with Tao Yongxing and the others that day, Were you injured? Burial of Heaven realized that there was a problem, so it answered truthfully. Tao Yongxing and the few divine kings of the Taotai clan all used king-grade high-grade divine artifacts. Although the battle was very short, I was indeed injured. However, they were all minor injuries, so I didn't tell you. In these few days, I have been silently absorbing divine power to slowly heal my injuries. I should be fully recovered in a month. Ji Tianxing thought to himself, as expected, and asked again, then, did you feel anything strange in these few days? For example, were there any special forces or traces of the blade's injuries? This Burial of Heaven was silent for a long time, then it said in a low voice, I checked it carefully, but I didn't find any special forces or traces. However, there are a total of 5 injuries on the blade. I have been trying my best to heal them, but only 4 injuries are healing. One of the injuries doesn't seem to be a big problem, and it is also very light, but there are no signs of recovery. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing vaguely guessed the answer. He hurriedly held the sword of Burial of Heaven and carefully examined it, looking for any damage on the blade. However, the damage to the Burial of Heaven was not on the surface, but on the internal structure of the divine sword. It was impossible to see with the naked eye. Therefore, Ji Tianxing could only use his God's eye secret technique to carefully examine the internal structure of the divine sword. Not long after, he found 5 damaged areas from the extremely complicated internal structure. Under the guidance of the Burial of Heaven, he eliminated the 4 damages and finally locked onto the unrecoverable damage. At first, he couldn't tell what was wrong with the injury. However, Ji Tianxing activated his divine sense and performed his ultimate skill. Finally, he found some clues. In that extremely small and negligible damage, there was actually a wisp of gray qi that seemed to be there but not there. I've finally found it. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows as a glint flashed across his eyes. That wisp of gray qi was less than 1/100th the size of a strand of hair. There were no ripples of divine power, and it seemed to have no attribute. Ji Tianxing was sure that this wisp of gray qi had nothing to do with the Taotai race or Tao Yongxing's divine power. However, it was this inconspicuous wisp of gray qi that had exposed his tracks and routes to Tao Yongxing's detection. The Burial of Heaven also realized and said with some self-blame, no wonder Tao Yongxing could grasp our tracks. I hadn't thought that he would be so cunning. I was careless this time. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been ambushed. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and then a meaningful smile appeared on his face. He said, You don't have to blame yourself. This may not be a mistake. Maybe it is our chance. Chance? What chance? The Burial of Heaven stilled and instinctively asked. Ji Tianxing said with a smile, A chance to counterattack. What do you plan to do? The Burial of Heaven vaguely guessed his thoughts and asked. Haha, you'll know in a while. Ji Tianxing chuckled and began to cast a spell to retrieve that wisp of gray qi. At the border between the Ganyang domain and Clear Sky domain, the place where Ji Tianxing was ambushed previously had already become a wasteland with a radius of 100,000 miles. Flying across the sky, even from tens of thousands of miles away, the wasteland was still very conspicuous. At this time, Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and 3 Taotai race elders were standing above the wasteland, observing with solemn expressions. There was another group of people tens of thousands of miles away. They were also circling in the sky, carefully observing the battlefield. That group of people were Qiongqi race experts. There were a total of 22 people. However, the strange thing was that there were only 2 God King experts in this group. The other 20 were all upper divine lords. The 2 God Kings were naturally Qiongqi race clan leader Shueshang and right protector Min Tai. The 20 upper divine lords were all wearing blood-red armor. They were naturally the elites of the blood slaughter hall. Shueshang personally went out, but he only brought the Qiongqi race's 3rd strongest expert, right protector Min Tai. He did not bring an elder with him. This was because even someone as powerful as the left protector had been killed by Long Tian. It was meaningless for him to bring the elders. Instead, it would be life-threatening. The Cheongqi race had already suffered heavy losses. They could not lose even one more elder. As for the elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall, even if 20 of them died in battle, it would not be so regrettable. Both sides observed the battlefield for a while before gathering together to meet. Tao Yongxing cupped his hands at Xueshang and asked, "Clan leader Xueshang, did you find any clues?" Xueshang sneered and said expressionlessly, "You personally fought with Long Tian. You know his strength and methods best. Why ask me?" Clearly, Xueshang was very angry and blamed Tao Yongxing for hiding the truth. Tao Yongxing was a little embarrassed. He hurriedly changed the topic and said, "It happened not long ago. Only a day has passed. That kid is seriously injured and should not have escaped far. I'll execute the secret art right away and investigate that kid's whereabouts and position. This time we'll join hands. No matter how great that kid's ability is, he'll also die without a doubt." Although Xueshang harbored resentment towards Tao Yongxing, but these few sentences of his, Xueshang still agreed very much. His eyes surged with a malevolent glint as he laughed coldly and said, "Ho, the Cheongqi and Taotai 2 clans' strongest people have all moved out. 4 ninth stage realm divine kings joining hands, who can stop them? He's not the Dragon Emperor, so of course he'll die without a doubt. If we fail again this time and let him escape alive, you guys just slit your own throats and commit suicide." Tao Yongxing, the High Priest and the 3 Taotai race elders' expressions were rather gloomy. "Why should we commit suicide? If that kid escapes, won't you lose face?" This thought flashed across the 5 people's minds at the same time. Of course, this matter was because they had a request from the Cheongqi race, requesting the Cheongqi race to come forward and help. Therefore, this sentence could only be thought about in their hearts and could not be said out. Immediately, Tao Yongxing took out the Chaos Primordial Bell and started invoking the art to investigate Ji Tianxing's position. Xueshang also took out a king-level upper-grade divine ship and personally steered the divine ship, bringing everyone to fly towards the north. Chapter 36-43. There were teleportation arrays between the continents and regions of the Dragon Realm. There were also teleportation arrays between the main cities of the Clear Sky region and the Ganyang region. However, the teleportation arrays between the cities and regions were heavily guarded with layers of protection. Only people of high status were qualified to use those teleportation arrays. Because of the teleportation arrays, Tao Yongxing, the High Priest, and Tao Yuxing were able to make it back in time after being shaken off by Ji Tianxing. Now, the experts of the 2 clans had joined forces to kill Ji Tianxing and had to use the teleportation arrays to make it back in time. Swoosh! Xueshang drove the dark red divine warship and sped through the sky, heading straight for the main city closest to the border. There was a teleportation array in the main city that could teleport to an imperial city in the middle of the Ganyang region. Even if Ji Tianxing had been running for a day, they could still make it to the front to intercept him. In the main hall of the divine warship, Tao Yongxing used a secret technique and quickly found Ji Tianxing's location. That guy ran really fast. He actually escaped to the Surging Sun Empire. Currently, he seems to be in the Surging Sun Lake? Tao Yongxing sat cross-legged in the main hall. The primordial chaos bell became 1 foot tall and floated in front of him. It spun slowly and flashed with divine light. He closed his eyes and used his mind to sense Ji Tianxing's location. The right guardian of the Cheongqi clan, who was guarding the main hall, hurriedly reported to Xueshang when he heard the words, "Surging Sun Lake." Xueshang immediately planned their route. They would first enter the main city at the border and use the teleportation array to reach the imperial city of the Surging Sun Empire. Then, they would drive the divine warship to the Surging Sun Lake and kill Ji Tianxing on the way. After a while, Tao Yongxing suddenly raised his eyebrows as if he had understood something. He immediately grinned coldly. That guy is in the surging sun lake. Why hasn't he moved after so long? Could it be that I understand. He must have been severely injured and hid in the surging sun lake to recuperate from his injuries. Ha ha! He can't run away now. Just wait for death. Hearing Tao Yongxing's laughter, the high priest and the other elders looked expectant. Their eyes flashed with cold light. The distance from the border of the Ganyang region to the Surging Sun Empire's Surging Sun Lake was a total of 20 million li. Even if Xue Shang personally steered the divine ship, it would still take him 20 hours to arrive. However, with the divine teleportation array and the time taken to travel, it only took them 2 hours to reach the imperial city of the Surging Sun Empire. Then, Xue Shang steered the divine ship and left the imperial city, rushing toward the gushing sun lake that was 300,000 miles away. Everyone knew that the heavily injured Long Tian was currently hiding in the gushing sun lake to recuperate and had not moved for a long time. This time, it was the best opportunity to kill Long Tian. When Xue Shang thought about how he would soon be able to obtain the Dragon Clan's bloodline and the high-level Divine King's dragon corpse, his heart was filled with anticipation. At the same time, the death of the left protector and the 3 elders had brought him a lot of relief. Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and the others' feelings were similar to Xue Shang's. Although they could only obtain the blood of the Rock Clan and the Phoenix Clan, they could avenge their clansmen by killing Long Tian. Most importantly, the Taotai clan's face and dignity were preserved. 45 minutes later, the blood-red divine ship that was thousands of feet long and shaped like a sharp shuttle arrived in the sky above the gushing sun lake. Under the golden sun, this huge lake with a radius of close to 50,000 miles was a scene of rolling waves and sparkling wave. This place was rich in divine power and resources, so many spirit beasts and demonic beasts were hiding in the lake. However, when the divine ship arrived, it brought with it an invisible pressure that caused many spirit beasts and demonic beasts to flee in panic. Those that could not escape in time hid in caves and lairs at the bottom of the lake, trembling. They did not dare to move at all. Xue Shang followed the direction Tao Yongxing pointed, and steered the divine ship toward the center of the lake. That kid is in the center of the lake. He should be hiding at the bottom of the lake. Head southeast, about 20,000 miles away from us. That's right, Xue Shang, you'd better conceal the aura of the divine ship so that you don't wake that kid up. Tao Yongxing pointed the way for Xue Shang while reminding him to hide. Xue Shang did not think much of it and smiled confidently. Since you're sure that the kid is still in the lake, he's definitely dead. Do we need to conceal our aura? Even if he wakes up and starts to run now, he won't be able to escape from me. Ha ha ha! Tao Yongxing laughed dryly and could not help but say, it's better to be careful. After all, that kid is very cunning. In a flash, the divine ship swept across 20,000 miles of the lake. After reaching the center of the lake, Xue Shang immediately put away the divine ship. Swoosh! Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Tao Yongxing and the 4 Taotai race god kings, Xue Shang and the 21 Qiongqi race experts all appeared above the lake. Everyone, spread out and surround this place. Be careful! Tao Yongxing and Xue Shang ordered in unison. All of a sudden, everyone spread out and formed an encirclement with a radius of 2,000 miles above the lake. Other than the 2 clan leaders, everyone took out their divine weapons and accumulated divine power in their bodies. They looked at the lake with vigilance. Tao Yongxing and Xue Shang were empty-handed and stood above the lake calmly. The 2 looked at the calm lake under their feet and could not help but sneer. Ha ha ha! That kid still hasn't noticed that we're here. There's no reaction at all? It looks like he's seriously injured and has no time to care about anything else. While sneering, Xue Shang waved his hand and sent out a dazzling divine light into the calm lake. Immediately, the lake water within a 100-mile radius was refined and disappeared into thin air. The dark red blood light formed a shield with a radius of 100 miles and a depth of 10,000 feet, separating the center of the lake from the rest of the world. Everyone could clearly see that there seemed to be a cave among several huge rocks at the bottom of the lake. Those rocks were protected by 2 divine formations and were flickering with a faint divine light. Tao Yongxing looked at the rocks and sneered mockingly, "Long Tian, hurry up and come out to meet your death." The rolling sound waves contained a soul-shaking power that penetrated the 2 divine formations and enveloped those rocks. However, those rocks did not respond. Ji Tianxing also did not show up. Xueshang frowned and vaguely had a bad premonition. He waved his hand and sent out several dazzling blood-red sword light. Bang bang bang! Immediately, the 2 divine formations protecting the rocks were shattered by the blood-red sword lights. Those rocks were also cut open by the sword lights and rolled to the side. A dilapidated cave was revealed. Above the rubble on the ground, there was a crystal ball the size of an egg. Inside the translucent crystal ball, a tiny wisp of gray gas could be vaguely seen. However, Ji Tianxing and the Sword of Burial of Heaven were nowhere to be seen. Seeing this scene, the expressions of Tao Yongxing, Xueshang, and more than 20 powerhouses froze, and their faces were full of shock. The next moment, Xueshang and Tao Yongxing reacted at the same time and could not help but exclaim, "Damn it! We've been fooled! Everyone be careful!" Chapter 36-44. When they came, they were full of confidence. Who would have thought that after finding Long Tian's hiding place, they would end up empty-handed? Xueshang and Tao Yongxing's reactions were fast and alert. While the god kings and elites of the bloody slaughter hall were still in a daze, the 2 of them realized that the situation was bad. Not only did they realize that they had been tricked, but they also guessed that this was very likely a trap set by Long Tian. Even though the possibility of the heavily injured Long Tian setting up an ambush for so many experts was not high. Unless Long Tian was tired of living and wanted to die. However, Xueshang and Tao Yongxing were very cautious and did not rule out this possibility. After all, with Long Tian's daring character, nothing was impossible. As Xueshang and Tao Yongxing's exclamations sounded, the god kings and elites of the bloody slaughter hall came to their senses and hurriedly retreated. Everyone's attention was still focused on the rocks and the crystal ball. In their predictions, if Long Tian had set up an ambush here, the key would definitely be the crystal ball. Not only did the god kings and elites of the bloody slaughter hall think so, but even Xueshang thought so. Only Tao Yongxing was different. He stared at the crystal ball for a while and frowned. He cursed in his heart and quickly moved his gaze away to look around. Damn it! The formless primal chaos chi that I left in his sword was actually removed by him? That formless chaotic energy was hidden very well. How could he have discovered it? Without a doubt, that wisp of gray energy was the mark he left in the burial of heaven when he used the primordial chaos bell to fight with Ji Tianxing. With this mark, he was able to track Ji Tianxing's position and escape route and find this place. Now, the formless chaotic energy had been removed and Ji Tianxing had disappeared. Whether or not Ji Tianxing had set up an ambush, his plan to kill him had failed. However, this matter was not over yet. Just as everyone was on high alert, the surface of the lake in all directions suddenly lit up with divine light that soared into the sky. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Tens of thousands of starry sword lights soared into the sky from the bottom of the lake, instantly forming a silver light shield with a radius of 10,000 miles, sealing off this area. The heaven-destroying sword formation formed by 40,000 starry giant swords was formed. The sword formation was activated, releasing a formless pressure and sharp sword chi that pressed down from the sky. Immediately, the expressions of the experts above the lake changed. Their eyes were filled with anger and worry. Damn it! That brat really set up an ambush here. Everyone, don't panic. We have so many people, and we even have 2 clan leaders. What are we afraid of? It's fine if that brat ran away, but I didn't expect that he would dare to set up an ambush for us. He's dead for sure. Ha ha. He's too arrogant and conceited. He's courting death. After the initial panic, the experts of the two clans quickly calmed down. Seeing Tao Yongxing and Xue Shang remain calm, the masters of the two clans regained their confidence. In their minds, with 4 ninth stage realm god kings present, what was there to be afraid of? Other than peak god kings, no one could defeat those 4 experts. At this moment, Tao Yongxing and Xue Shang stood above the lake with arrogant expressions. They looked up at the huge heaven-destroying sword formation and opened their mouths to speak. Long Tian, you can actually see through the formless chaos chi that this seat is hiding. This seat indeed has a whole new level of respect for you. But unfortunately, you've overestimated your own ability. If you run away now, you can still save your life. But you actually still want to counterattack. That's too laughable. Tao Yongxing's face hung a cold smile as he shouted loudly like a bell. Xue Shang's face was gloomy and his tone was cold as he shouted angrily, "Little beast, are you intending to keep hiding in the dark like a coward? Come out and accept your death. This seat is going to avenge the dead clansmen today." As the billowing voice spread across the sky, the two of them gave off a sacred majesty, causing the god kings and sir gods of the two clans to be filled with confidence and anticipation. Following that, in the empty sky, a white figure appeared out of thin air. Swoosh! That was a youth from the dragon clan who was dressed in a white robe and covered with golden dragon scales. He was handsome and had an imposing appearance. That was Ji Tianxing. He was also within the heaven punishment sword formation. Standing high in the sky, he looked down at everyone from above. Tao Yongxing, wasn't the lesson that I taught you previously painful enough? For the sake of the Taotai clan's reputation, you sacrificed the lives of all the elders. Do you think it's worth it? For the sake of illusory dignity, you let the clansmen go to their deaths dauntlessly? Or do you decisively stop the pursuit and cut your losses in time? I hope that you can consider it carefully. After all, there is no real deep hatred between us. It's all because you are too greedy. Ji Tianxing looked down at Tao Yongxing expressionlessly and said coldly. The Grand Priest and Tao Yuxing had previously discussed this issue and had suggested it to Tao Yongxing. But Tao Yongxing had rejected it. Now, in front of the experts of the two clans, Ji Tianxing had said this. Even if Tao Yongxing had wavered and thought of giving up the pursuit, it was impossible for him to consider it again. He didn't even hesitate at all. He was very confident and overbearing as he shouted angrily, "What a joke! You will definitely die today. I'm about to turn your bones into ashes, and you still dare to spout nonsense here? Why didn't you think of reconciliation when you massacred my clansmen? Now that you are in a desperate situation, you want to beg me for reconciliation? Wishful thinking. I will definitely kill you today, and I will tear you into pieces." As soon as Tao Yongxing's voice fell, Xue Shang turned to look at him and said expressionlessly, "I said that his body and godhead are mine." If Tao Yongxing tore Long Tian's body into pieces and turned his bones into ashes, then how could he refine the Dragon Clan's bloodline? Tao Yongxing knew that he had misspoken and hurriedly explained, "I just said it casually. Since we have an agreement, of course I will leave his corpse intact." High in the sky, Ji Tianxing retracted his gaze and no longer paid attention to Tao Yongxing. In fact, he had long expected that Tao Yongxing would have such a reaction, and he was only giving Tao Yongxing one last chance before he started the massacre. Then, he looked at Xue Shang and said expressionlessly, "Xue Shang, this is a grudge between me and the Taotai clan. It has nothing to do with the Cheongqi clan. If you are smart enough, it's best to take your people and leave. Otherwise, not only will you not get any benefits, but you will also sink deeper and deeper." Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, Xue Shang sneered disdainfully and interrupted him. "Ha ha ha ha! How laughable and pitiful! Long Tian, Is this how you admit defeat and beg to surrender? If you obediently lay down your arms and surrender, kowtow to me and admit your wrongdoings, perhaps I will grant you a quick death." As soon as Shui Shang's voice fell, the powerhouses of the two clans laughed loudly. They looked at Ji Tianxing with eyes full of contempt and ridicule. Ji Tianxing still looked indifferent and said calmly, "I have said what I should say. Since you insist on seeking death, then I will grant you your wish." Chapter 36:45. After Ji Tianxing finished speaking, he started to control the heaven-destroying sword formation with both hands. The heaven-destroying sword formation in the surging sun lake was different from the one he usually used with the burial of heaven sword. Normally, he would use the sword rain to summon tens of thousands of starry giant swords to kill the target first. Then, the tens of thousands of starry giant swords would form a sword formation. This kind of sword formation was very rare in the God realm and Dragon realm. Only a few peak divine kings could do it. In addition, the power of the heaven-destroying sword formation was extraordinary. Therefore, Ji Tianxing could usually kill strong enemies with this move. But it was different this time. He calculated that the Taotai and Cheong Chi's elites would arrive. If he used the heaven-destroying sword formation at the last minute, it would not be powerful enough. Therefore, he spent a few hours to bury 99 divine swords in the surging sun lake in advance. He used the 99 divine swords as the foundation and used a large amount of divine power, god stones, and materials to set up the heaven-destroying sword formation. In this way, the power of this heaven-destroying sword formation was about 5 times stronger than the heaven-destroying sword formation he usually used. It was even stronger than the one he used at the Starry Cliff with the help of the extraterritorial stars. Such a powerful heaven-destroying sword formation was enough to kill everyone except Shui Shang, Tao Yongxing, the High Priest, and the Right Guardian. Time was very tight. Ji Tianxing had just finished setting up the heaven-destroying sword formation and was about to finish the work to hide the sword formation more perfectly. But his divine senses detected that the elites of the two clans had arrived on the divine ship. Therefore, he could only hide and wait for the elites of the two clans to step into the trap. He was still worried that Tao Yongxing and Shui Shang were too cautious and would not easily fall into the trap. He did not expect that his worry was unnecessary. Tao Yongxing, Shui Shang, and the rest had absolute confidence and did not take him seriously at all. Therefore, his counterattack plan was unusually successful. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As Ji Tianxing cast spells with both hands, the heaven-destroying sword formation within a radius of 10,000 miles immediately sped up. The sword formation burst forth with dazzling divine light, releasing an even more powerful pressure and sword chi. Under his control, 20,000 starry giant swords maintained the seal while the other 20,000 giant swords flew back and forth between heaven and earth, attacking the experts of the two clans. Swish! Swish! In an instant, dozens of sword blade storms, sword light vortexes, and sword rain poured down from the sky and were about to drown everyone. Everyone felt a great pressure and a strong sense of impending death. Their expressions immediately became much more serious, especially the 3 elders of the Taotai clan and the 20 elites of the Bloodbath Hall. They seemed as if they were facing a great enemy, and dense worry surged out from their eyes. They didn't have the confidence to block the sword light that blotted out the sky. Tao Yongxing did not dare to be careless. He hurriedly took out the primordial chaos bell and suspended it above his head. Furthermore, he shouted in a solemn tone, "Everyone, be careful. This sword formation is extraordinarily powerful. We must not be careless." He had witnessed the power of the heaven-destroying sword formation when he was at the Starry Cliff in the star-devouring grotto heaven. At that time, if it wasn't for the protection of the primordial chaos bell, the elders would have been seriously injured even if they didn't die. Even he himself might not have been able to escape unscathed. The Grand Priest, Tao Yuxing, and the 2 elders of the Taotai clan did not need his reminder. They were extremely cautious as they went all out to deal with the sword light that blotted out the sky. As for Xue Shang and the Right Guardian, they were not too vigilant. Humph, it's just a sword formation that looks extravagant. What's there to be afraid of? He only has a few hours at most to set up this sword formation. How powerful can it be? Xue Shang snorted disdainfully as he looked at the sword light vortexes that descended from the sky. He charged forward bravely and swung his fists to throw out two fist shadows that were the size of mountains. He wanted to destroy the sword light vortexes in front of everyone without using any divine weapons. In this way, he could not only display his bravery and the strength of the Qiongqi clan, but he could also fiercely intimidate Ji Tianqing. The Right Guardian and the 20 elites of the Bloodbath Hall saw the Taotai clan's supreme gods in a defensive posture as if they were facing a great enemy. Their clan leader charged forward bravely. Instantly, they felt their blood boiling as pride and anticipation welled up in their hearts. If they were not fighting a great battle, they would definitely take the opportunity to mock the Taotai clan's supreme gods. Haha, look at how timid you are. What a bunch of cowards. Look at how valiant our clan leader is. Just as this thought flashed through everyone's minds, Xue Shang had already collided with the sword light vortexes. Boom! Crack! Amidst the deafening loud noise, the two fist shadows that Xue Shang threw out smashed the sword light vortexes. Even though the two fist shadows were also smashed and turned into divine light fragments that scattered in all directions. However, the sword light vortexes being destroyed by Xue Shang in one move still greatly boosted the Qiongqi clan's morale. Looking at the Taotai clan again, they actually hid around Tao Yongxing. Meanwhile, Tao Yongxing cast a spell to activate the primordial chaos spell, causing it to expand to a radius of 100,000 feet. It was like a huge shield that protected him and the Taotai clan's elders. Bam! 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 7 sword light vortexes and sword rain came down one after another, but they were all blocked by the primordial chaos spell. Everyone was unharmed. Even though they were unharmed, they all lowered their heads and felt ashamed. Their old faces were burning. After all, the Qiongqi clan's Right Guardian and the elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall were looking at them with cold smiles and disdain. Even if they didn't say anything, the Taotai clan's people felt very embarrassed. The high priest hesitated and sent a voice transmission to Tao Yongxing. Clan leader, we can't hide in the primordial chaos spell. We will be laughed at by the Qiongqi clan. Anyway, you and I don't fear the power of this sword formation. Why don't the two of us kill Long Tian? Use this primordial chaos spell to protect the 3 elders. Tao Yongxing thought for a moment and nodded. All right, then we will do as you say. Then he handed the primordial chaos spell to Tao Yongxing to control. He and the high priest both took out their divine weapons and charged out of the primordial chaos spell bravely but cautiously, attacking Ji Tianqing high in the sky. Bam! 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 Countless starry swords, sword light vortexes, and storms kept attacking the primordial chaos spell, but to no avail. The 3 elders of the Taotai clan stayed in the range of the primordial chaos spell and felt very safe. However, it was still embarrassing for them to hide under the primordial chaos spell while the others were fighting bravely. The 3 of them discussed in secret. When the power of the sword formation weakened, they would also charge out and fight Ji Tianqing for a few hundred rounds. Only in this way would they not let today's battle become a disgrace to them. On the other side, Xue Shang and the Right Guardian relied on their strength to charge wildly in the sky and destroy one ball of sword light after another. They locked onto Ji Tianqing's aura and charged left and right in the sword rain, trying to get close to Ji Tianqing. However, the 20 elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall suffered a calamity and were quickly annihilated. Chapter 36-46. The Right Guardian had given the elites of the Hall of Bloody Slaughter a king high-grade divine artifact to save their lives. It was an old and shabby 10,000 demon banner. It released a thick blood-red light that formed a light shield to protect everyone. However, the 10,000 demon banner needed divine power to unleash its power. The 20 elites of the Hall of Bloody Slaughter hid in the blood-red light shield. They focused on unleashing the 10,000 demon banner to maintain the blood-red light shield. Unfortunately, their strength was too weak. The blood-red light shield withstood the attacks of the 10,000 swords. In the blink of an eye, it was full of cracks. It was on the verge of shattering. The elites of the Hall of Bloody Slaughter were so scared that their faces turned pale. They unleashed their divine power to control the 10,000 demon banner to repair the cracks on the shield. Unfortunately, the 10,000 demon banner was the Right Guardian's natal divine artifact. They rarely touched it or used it. They only knew the basic control chants of the 10,000 demon banner. They couldn't unleash the power of the 10,000 demon banner, nor could they perform profound and high-end operations. Therefore, they soon met with a tragedy. Kaboom! Crack, crack, crack. When the rain of swords came again, the blood-red light shield that was full of cracks couldn't withstand it anymore. It was smashed into pieces and fell apart. Countless blood-red fragments of divine light splashed in all directions. The 20 elites of the Hall of Bloody Slaughter were also drowned by the rain of swords. They let out heart-wrenching cries of despair. Ah! Almost every elite of the Hall of Bloody Slaughter was hit by dozens of giant swords. Their bodies were blasted into smithereens, and their godheads were also shattered into dregs. They were truly annihilated. In the blink of an eye, the 20 elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall were all dead. Not a single one was spared. Their cries were still echoing in the sky, but they were soon drowned out by the deafening explosions. High up in the sky, the 4LV9 Divine King Realm experts broke through all the obstacles and destroyed dozens of sword-light whirlpools and storms. Finally, they surrounded Ji Tianqing. Even though Ji Tianqing dashed left and right, fleeing at top speed and even using his teleportation divine ability, Ji Tianqing still couldn't escape. However, his strength was somewhat weak, and he seemed to be lacking in strength. Soon, he was heavily surrounded. Xueshang, the Right Guardian, Tao Yongxing, and the High Priest stood in 4 different directions, staring at him with murderous eyes. They grinned cruelly. "I've already said this long ago. What bullshit sword formation? It's all flashy stuff. In front of absolute strength, these are all jokes." Xueshang sneered with a ferocious face. His hands returned to the original shape of the Qiong cheese claws, sparkling with a cold light. Tao Yongxing also grinned coldly and said in a mocking tone, "Long Tian, you are indeed heavily injured and weak. Don't you have a few guards around you? Why didn't you call them to protect you? This is your last chance. If you don't make them show themselves, you will die." Actually, he was somewhat anxious when he didn't see Bai Feng, Chao Qingyu, Yank, and Peng Fei. He knew that these guards must be in Ji Tianqing's personal divine artifact. If he killed Ji Tianqing like this, then Ji Tianqing's corpse, godhead, and divine artifact would all belong to Xueshang. He wouldn't be able to get any benefits. Previously, he had already discussed the terms with Xueshang. Other than Ji Tianqing's corpse, godhead, and equipment, everything else would belong to him. In that case, he could at least get the Phoenix bloodline and the Golden Rock bloodline to comfort himself. Ji Tianqing, who was surrounded by 4 people, was obviously weak, but he still pretended to be calm. "This sword formation is enough to deal with you. I don't need any guards at all." After saying that, he waved the Burial of Heaven sword and slashed out a dazzling sword light toward the weakest High Priest in an attempt to break out of the encirclement. The High Priest was used as a breakthrough point, and he was quite angry. Originally, he would avoid the attack and cast a spell to stop Ji Tianqing. For the sake of his dignity and face, he chose to fight head-on and not give an inch. Invincible blood slash! The High Priest roared angrily and waved the blood-red divine sword with both hands, splashing out a sky full of sword shadows to attack. Bam! 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 The blood-red sword light collided with the sky full of sword light, and there was a deafening explosion. Suddenly, the sword light and the sword light collapsed at the same time, exploding into fragments of divine light. The violent impact and the dozens of starry giant swords that took the opportunity to attack fiercely sent the high priest flying. Puff, while he was still flying in the air, his face was distorted and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Although the high priest's injuries were not serious and did not affect his ability to continue fighting, he was sent flying. Ji Tianxing took the opportunity to rush out of the encirclement and escape the heaven-destroying sword formation. This sword formation was set up by him, so he could enter and leave at will. Xueshang, Tao Yongxing, and the others could not. Once he left the heaven-destroying sword formation, if they wanted to chase after him, they would have to cast a spell to break the sword formation. In that case it would take at least 2 hours. Where could they find him? This thought flashed through the minds of Xueshang, Tao Yongxing, and the Right Guardian at the same time, and they became anxious. Stop him, we can't let him escape. We can't let him escape from the sword formation. Otherwise, it will be difficult for us to catch up with him. Don't hold back anymore, don't fail miserably. The three of them roared at the same time and exploded with their fastest speed. They used their ultimate killer moves and attacked Ji Tianxing at the same time. Death Sword of Heavenly Sun. Million Slaughter of Blood Sea. 9 Heavens Dark Sky Attack. Along with the three people's angry roars, 3 extremely powerful secret techniques shone with a divine light that was even more dazzling than the scorching sun, engulfing Ji Tianxing's figure. Boom, 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 boom. In the sky full of sword light and blood light, Ji Tianxing was hit by the 3 divine powers and the protective divine light shattered on the spot. Then, the armor that he was wearing shattered into pieces and countless pieces fell to the ground. Then, his body exploded with a bang and turned into charred pieces that filled the sky and splashed out in all directions. The pitch-black pieces mixed with the divine light and chi waves and swiftly swept across thousands of miles, filling the entire heaven punishment sword formation. In the blink of an eye, the sky regained its clarity. Xueshang, Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and the Right Guardian all looked at the sky in shock. It was empty in front of everyone. Ji Tianxing no longer existed. The 4 of them had complicated expressions, and they were all stunned and stunned. It's over just like that? He's killed just like that? That's not right. Even if he's seriously injured and his power is greatly reduced, he shouldn't be so weak, right? Everyone, don't think too much. Although he killed several upper-level god kings earlier, he's not a peak god king and he's seriously injured. We're all 9th stage realm god kings, so it's natural for us to join forces and kill him. Hearing the Right Guardian's analysis, everyone felt that it made sense. But when Xueshang regained his senses, he was filled with rage as he roared with a black face, "Bastard! Tao Yongxing! You despicable villain! You blasted him into dregs, crushed his bones and scattered his ashes. Where will this seat go to find the Dragon Clan's bloodline?" Tao Yongxing's expression stiffened and was about to explain. Suddenly, the High Priest and Right Guardian's bodies stiffened and without any warning, they opened their mouths and spat out a large mouthful of foul blood. The 2 of them seemed to have understood something and instantly opened their eyes wide, revealing an intense horror. Wrong. This Long Tian is fake. There's a trap in here, we've fallen into a trap again. The 2 of them cried out in shock at the same time as their bodies started to tremble. Their faces also turned pale as bean-sized beads of sweat appeared on their foreheads. Seeing their reaction, Xueshang and Tao Yongxing were filled with vigilance as they hurriedly asked, "What's going on? Why did the 2 of you?" Without waiting for the High Priest and Right Guardian to answer, Xueshang's body also trembled and suddenly his vision turned black. He only felt the god power in his body surging violently. His god blood was almost burning and his consciousness also became blurry. "There's poison," he subconsciously shouted. Chapter 36-47. The high priest and right guardian were slightly weaker than Xue Shang and Tao Yongxing. Especially the high priest, who had been injured when Long Tian broke out of the encirclement. As a result, he was the first to be poisoned and also the most severely. His vision had turned black, and his body was trembling. His divine blood was burning, and his body was about to explode. He had no choice but to sit cross-legged in the sky and protect himself with his divine sword. He quickly used his power to suppress his injuries. The right guardian's situation was not much better. He only felt that his divine power was chaotic, his divine blood was boiling, and he was about to explode. He could not speak, so he closed his eyes and quickly used his power to heal his injuries. Although Xue Shang and Tao Yongxing were poisoned, they were not injured and were less affected by the strong poison. The two of them used their profound power to suppress the violent divine power and divine blood and tried their best to keep their minds clear. It is indeed poisonous. The Long Tian that we killed just now was also fake. I understand now. The fake Long Tian just now should have been formed by some kind of divine weapon or superpower, and it contained strong poison. We smashed it into pieces, and the strong poison took the opportunity to spread. We were not prepared and were invaded by the strong poison. Xue Shang and Tao Yongxing discussed and quickly guessed the source of the strong poison. In fact, they guessed right. But the problem now was, what kind of poison were they poisoned with? Damn it, what kind of poison is this? It is invisible and colorless, and there is no abnormality at all. Damn beast, you only know how to use such sinister and despicable methods. Xue Shang and Tao Yongxing were full of anger. They secretly used their power to check their divine bodies several times, but they could not find where the strong poison was, let alone what kind of poison it was. But their symptoms were that they were poisoned. If we don't know what kind of poison it is, we can't neutralize it and get rid of it. Don't worry so much, let's first protect everyone out of the sword formation, then think of a way to neutralize the strong poison. Xue Shang and Tao Yongxing quickly reached a consensus and decided to escort everyone out of the Heaven Punishment sword formation. The High Priest and Right Guardian situation finally stabilized, and the two of them used their power to temporarily suppress their injuries. With Xue Shang and Tao Yongxing by their side to help them block countless sword radiances, they were in a relatively safe situation. However, when they turned their heads to look down and saw the situation clearly, their expressions immediately changed. The 20 blood slaughter hall elites of the Cheongqi clan had long been killed by the sword light. The 3 elders of the Taotai clan were also in a tragic state. They were on the verge of death. Previously, they had been hiding in the barrier of the Bell of Chaos and could barely resist the sword light. However, when they saw Long Tian being besieged by 4 powerhouses and had no choice but to flee, they felt that the opportunity to perform had arrived. We can't keep hiding in the Bell of Chaos. This will become our humiliation. We have to make a move at the right time to help the Patriarch and the others attack Long Tian. Only then can we wash away our humiliation. This was a joint decision made by the 3 elders. Therefore, they decisively left the Chaos Bell's barrier and bravely brandished their sabers and swords. They passed through the blockade of the sword beams that filled the sky and charged at Long Tian, who was fleeing in a sorry state. Unfortunately, before they could even get close to Long Tian was killed by the joint forces of the 4 experts. The 3 elders felt that it was a pity that they had yet to display their bravery. However, this was also good. If they killed Long Tian earlier, this matter would be over. However, what the 3 elders did not expect was that Long Tian was blasted into pieces that filled the sky. They spread in all directions with the violent shockwave. The dazzling shockwave of divine light swept over with a large amount of pitch-black debris. When the 3 elders broke through the sword rain that filled the sky, they had all suffered some injuries, light or heavy. When the colorful shockwave attacked, the 3 of them could not dodge. They were all sent flying and spat out blood. At that moment they had fallen 50 kilometers away. They were all covered in blood and looked miserable. They had thought that the matter was over. Even if they were seriously injured, it was not bad to be able to preserve their lives. They could heal their injuries after leaving the sword formation. Unexpectedly, the three of them were invaded by the poison. Soon, their divine bodies swelled, their divine blood burned, and their divine power became chaotic. The three of them burned with dark red blood flames. Their divine bodies swelled and twisted wantonly like monsters. Their internal organs were shattered. Their divine blood, meridians, and bone marrow were burned to ashes, bringing them extreme heart-wrenching pain. Ah! The three of them let out shrill screams. They struggled madly in the sky, rolling and rolling to lessen the pain. Unfortunately, it was all in vain. The invisible poison not only invaded their divine bodies, it even invaded their consciousness and tainted their divinities. Soon, the three elders fell into a coma. Their divine bodies were burned to pieces, and black ashes scattered all over the sky. High in the sky, Tao Yongxing and Xueshang saw this scene with their own eyes. They were both shocked and angry. Especially Tao Yongxing. He was so angry that his eyes were about to pop out. He roared and rushed over. Swoosh! He rushed to the three elders' side, trying to cast a spell to suppress their injuries and save their lives. Even if he could not save their bodies, he had to save their divinities. Otherwise, if the three elders died here, the Taotai clan would suffer an unprecedented loss. However, Tao Yongxing tried several methods, but he could not suppress the three elders' injuries. There were thousands of starry giant swords in all directions, continuously stabbing at him. He not only had to use his power to suppress his injuries, but he also had to resist the strangulation of the giant swords. He also had to cast a spell to save the three elders. No matter how strong he was powerless at this moment. There was nothing he could do to save the situation. Xueshang, are you standing there and watching the show? Quickly come and help. Tao Yongxing, who was anxious, angry, and helpless, really could not save the three elders. He roared at Xueshang, who was above his head. Xueshang also felt wronged. His face immediately darkened. He pointed at the high priest and right guardian behind him and shouted angrily at Tao Yongxing, "If I go and help you, what about them? Will they be killed by the thousands of swords?" Indeed, the high priest and right guardian had been invaded by the poison and had been using their power to suppress their injuries. At this moment, they were at their weakest and had no power to protect themselves at all. Relying on their divine weapons alone, they could not block the attacks of the thousands of swords. If it were not for Xueshang casting a spell to help them block most of the sword light, the two of them would have been strangled to pieces by the sword light. Tao Yongxing suddenly lost his temper. He also knew that Xueshang could not free himself to help. "Long Tian, you damned beast bastard! Don't let me catch you. I will definitely make you pay with your blood 10 times. Tao Yongxing, who was about to go crazy, roared hysterically, looking up to the sky and cursing. Before meeting Long Tian, he was the lofty and awe-inspiring Taotai clan leader. He could call the wind and summon the rain. He was omnipotent. No one dared to disobey his will. But now, for the first time, he experienced the emotions of weakness, helplessness, anger, and helplessness. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3648. Long Tian didn't even show up. He just used a little trick and made the Taotai and Cheongqis pay such a terrible price. Tao Yongxing couldn't help but think that if Long Tian had used this poison in the star-devouring grotto heaven, how terrible would the consequences be. Those thousands of Taotai clansmen wouldn't have been able to escape and would have all been turned into ashes, right? Thinking of this, Tao Yongxing felt a lingering fear and couldn't help but shiver. Sizzle, not long after, the bodies of Tao Yongxing and the two elders were burned to ashes by the blood fire. The three of them were burned to ashes, leaving only 3 shining godheads floating in the sky. Of course, the three godheads were also stained with a layer of dark blue light, and dark red blood fire rose. Even if their bodies are destroyed, as long as the godheads are still there is still a chance to recover. I can't protect their bodies, but I have to protect their godheads no matter what. Tao Yongxing could only settle for the second best. He could only accept this cruel reality and the consequences. He was about to cast a spell to suppress the dark blue light and blood fire on the three godheads and seal them. At this moment, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in the sky. I gave you a chance to mend your ways. Unfortunately, you refused. Are you satisfied with the result now? It was his voice. It was still so calm, cold, and emotionless. When this voice sounded in the sky, Tao Yongxing and Shueshang raised their heads instinctively and glared at the highest point of the sword formation. 30,000 feet above the ground, Ji Tianxing was wearing a white robe and was covered in golden light. He was looking down at them expressionlessly. He was not injured at all and was in peak condition. Not only was his divine power not weakened, but it was also several times stronger than before. Shueshang and Tao Yongxing were instantly furious. Their eyes were blood red, and their bodies burst with anger and killing intent. Long Tian, you despicable and sinister beast, I will burn your bones to ashes. Unparalleled anger rushed to Tao Yongxing's head. He ignored the three elders' godheads and activated the primordial chaos bell, charging towards Ji Tianxing with murderous intent. On the other hand, Shueshang was quite calm. He frowned and stared at Ji Tianxing. He thought to himself, so this is his real body. He really isn't injured. His divine aura is actually on par with mine. Could he be a ninth stage god king as well? This was impossible. If he really has such strength and realm, he must be a famous powerhouse in the Dragon Clan. There's no way I haven't heard of him. Long Tian was heavily injured and fled in a sorry state, was something that Shueshang had made up himself. The reason he told Tao Yongxing this was because he had selfish motive. He wanted Tao Yongxing to come over as soon as possible so that they could work together to deal with Long Tian. Previously, he had suspected that after Long Tian had killed the left protector and the three elders, he might not have been injured and had escaped unscathed. However, he had always been uncertain and felt that it was unlikely. Now that he had seen Long Tian with his own eyes, his guesses were confirmed. Waves of shock surged in his heart, and he was exceptionally shocked. Shua! In the blink of an eye, Tao Yongxing had rushed up to the sky. He was still 100,000 feet away from Ji Tianxing. His entire body surged with blood light as he activated the primordial chaos bell with all his might. He released 9 blood-red giant swords which struck towards Ji Tianxing. Although the primordial chaos bell was a defensive god relic, and its most powerful effect was in its defensive power. However, it wasn't that it couldn't attack. It was just that its offensive power was slightly weaker. Even so, it was after all a king-grade god relic. Under Tao Yongxing's full activation, the 9 blood swords released were shockingly powerful. If Ji Tianxing faced it head-on, it was highly possible that he would be heavily injured. Therefore, when the 9 blood swords came towards him, he didn't block it. Instead, he took a step back with an indifferent expression. Shua! A white light flashed and he retreated 10 feet. He passed through the heaven punishment sword array and stood in the sky outside the array. He didn't do anything and just looked at Tao Yongxing expressionlessly. Kaboom! The 9 blood swords, which were 1,000 feet long, hit the light wall of the heaven punishment sword array, and there was a deafening sound. The silver light wall shook violently, and the sword array within a radius of 10,000 miles shook violently. There were layers of ripples and starry silver light. However, the terrifying impact of the 9 blood swords was quickly neutralized by the sword array. The 9 blood swords were smashed into pieces and turned into countless pieces of blood light that scattered in the sky. There was no doubt that Tao Yongxing's full attack with the primordial chaos spell was unable to destroy the heaven punishment sword array. He was stunned. He stared at the light wall of the sword array and then looked at the primordial chaos spell in his hand. He was in a mess. Xue Shang cast a spell to protect the Grand Priest and the Right Guardian as he watched the battle. He didn't act rashly. When he saw the outcome, he frowned and his pupils contracted. There was a flash of astonishment in his eyes. This sword array is so powerful. Tao Yongxing activated the primordial chaos spell. No one except a peak divine king could block the full attack. This sword array was set up in a hurry. It can't be a supreme king-level divine array, right? Xue Shang couldn't accept the outcome. He couldn't imagine how terrifying Long Tian's array skills would be if the truth was as he guessed. The great array fell into silence for a while. Tao Yongxing couldn't back down. He was stunned and didn't know what to do. Continue to attack? Not only would he not be able to destroy the sword array, but he would also be humiliated. Stop and make peace? The Taotai tribe would be humiliated and he would rather kill himself. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing appeared calm and collected on the surface, but he secretly controlled the heaven-destroying sword formation and quietly devoured the godheads of the three elders. That was right. The divinities of Tao Yuxing and the two elders were still wrapped in dark blue light and crimson fire. They were floating in the sky. Ji Tianxing's target was their divinities. How could he let them go? Swoosh! There was a flash of white light and the divinities of the three elders disappeared. Tao Yongxing, who was still in a daze, suddenly felt that something was wrong. He looked down and searched for the divinities of the three elders. At this moment, Ji Tianxing spoke again and pulled his attention back. Those who are unjust are doomed to destruction. The Taotai tribe and the Qiongqi tribe have done many evil things since ancient times. What happened before had nothing to do with me, so I naturally wouldn't care. But it's a pity that all of you are relentlessly pursuing this prince and will not stop until one of you is dead. Then don't blame this prince for being ruthless. As he spoke, he stepped into the Heaven Punishment sword array and took out the real burial of Heaven sword. He walked toward Tao Yongxing. Tao Yongxing instinctively retreated and wanted to hide in the primordial chaos bell with the injured high priest. At this moment, Xue Shang suddenly raised his eyebrows and shouted, "Hold on!" As expected, Ji Tianxing stopped in his tracks. The battle intent and the imperious aura emitting from his body came to a stop too. You finally thought it through and want to surrender? Chapter 36-49. Ji Tianxing squinted at Xue Shang with a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Xue Shang's face stiffened, and there was a flash of anger in his eyes. But he immediately suppressed his anger and said with a cold face, "Long Tian, today is the first time I've met you. Although you killed the left protector and 3 elders of my clan and have a blood feud with my clan. But I have to say that we did underestimate you before. Your scheming, means, and strength are enough to make me look at you with new eyes." Hearing his words, the sneer on Ji Tianxing's face grew even thicker. This was obviously the prelude to surrender and ask for peace. Next, there was a twist, and it was logical. Tao Yongxing also realized this point, and immediately became anxious. He glared at Xue Shang and asked with a voice transmission, "Xue Shang, what do you mean?" Xue Shang ignored him and looked straight at Ji Tianxing. He continued to ask in a deep voice, "I'm very curious. You only have 6 to 8 hours at most. How can you set up a king-level sword formation in this surging sun lake?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said in a playful tone, "Anyway, you are all going to die. Is there any meaning in asking this now?" Xue Shang frowned fiercely and suppressed his anger again. He said in a deep voice, "Of course there's meaning. I've also met many Dragon Clan experts, but I've never seen such a monster like you." Tao Yongxing frowned and the anger in his chest grew. He scolded again with a voice transmission, "Xue Shang, are you old and confused? He's our enemy. Why are you praising him? Are you king scared and want to surrender and ask for peace? As the saying goes, don't hit a smiling person. Since Xueshang praised him so sincerely, Ji Tianqing satisfied his curiosity a little. He sneered and said, "This sword formation is my life's unique skill that I've comprehended for hundreds of years. In addition, I happen to be good at formations." These two simple sentences didn't reveal much information. But Xueshang did not ask and continued to ask. The fake person just now was exactly the same as you. Even the divine power aura and divine soul fluctuations were normal. But after the fake body exploded, there was no divine blood, only poison. I've met many divine kings who are good at using poison, but I've never seen this kind of poison method. How did you do it? Hearing this question, Tao Yongxing was stunned. Then, he came to a sudden realization and thought to himself, so that's how it is. No wonder Xueshang pretended to be weak and praised Long Tian. It turned out that he wanted to inquire about the poison. After all, Long Tian was too young. After being praised by Xueshang, his confidence was inflated. Perhaps he would reveal some crucial information. In this way, we might be able to find a way to neutralize the poison. Xueshang is truly sinister enough to endure humiliation. Thinking, the way he looked at Xueshang's eyes changed. Xueshang of looked. He looked at Xueshang and said slowly, "I knew you would ask this question. That's what you're most concerned about, right? After all, you won't be able to neutralize the innate fiend soul transference poison in a short time." Innate fiend soul transference poison? Hearing these words, Tao Yongxing and Xueshang frowned and pondered. However, they searched the memories of their divine souls and did not find any relevant information. What kind of poison is this? I'm quite knowledgeable, so why haven't I heard of it? Xueshang asked in confusion. Ji Tianqing sneered, "Of course you haven't heard of it. This poison is a unique secret method that I've researched. I've only used it 4 or 5 times. I see. No wonder." Tao Yongxing and Xueshang were enlightened. Ji Tianqing continued, "Speaking of which, I've spent a lot of effort to deal with you. Your so-called fake body is one of this king's clones. I used the innate fiend soul transference poison to refine the doppelganger into a poisonous body, making it completely toxic. Not to mention the doppelganger's divine body, even the doppelganger's hair was made of poison. Originally, the doppelganger's strength was weaker, so there were still some flaws. But you were too confident, too arrogant, and eager to kill me. Naturally, you ignored those flaws." Hearing this, Tao Yongxing and Xueshang could not help but nod in agreement. That's right, Ji Tianqing's analysis was right. If they were not so confident and arrogant, and were more cautious before attacking, they would not have fallen into the trap. Unfortunately, time could not be turned back. Now, regarding the fake body and the poison, Ji Tianqing had explained the process. Xueshang's goal had been achieved. However, he and Tao Yongxing looked at each other and realized something was wrong. Although he told us the truth, we still don't know how to resolve the innate fiend soul transference poison? This guy is sinister and cunning. We can't believe all of his words. Maybe even the name innate fiend soul transference poison is fake. The two of them communicated telepathically and despaired again. At this time, Ji Tianqing looked at Xueshang with a smile and said, "I've said all that needs to be said. You should be on your way." As he spoke, he raised the sword of burial of heaven again. Holy and violent divine power was accumulated in his body, and he was ready to attack. Tao Yongxing suddenly felt as if he was facing a great enemy. He hurriedly released his divine power and poured it into the primordial chaos bell, activating the divine light shield. Xueshang also took a few steps back and hurriedly took out a divine and majestic skeleton that was shining with golden light. That's right, it was a dark golden skeleton of a Qiongqi beast that was hundreds of feet tall. Swoosh! He pulled the right guardian with one hand and hid in the skeleton of the Qiongqi beast without hesitation. Ji Tianxing did not know which Qiongqi beast's skeleton it was. But from the fluctuations of divine power emitted by the skeleton, he knew that it was equivalent to a supreme king-level divine artifact. Therefore, he did not hesitate to attack Tao Yongxing with his sword. Sword of Daytime. From hundreds of thousands of feet away, Ji Tianxing stabbed with the sword of Burial of Heaven fiercely. A cold light suddenly appeared and then expanded infinitely, like a scorching sun, and blasted toward Tao Yongxing. The mighty divine power and the sword intent that could destroy heaven and earth suppressed Tao Yongxing fiercely. Tao Yongxing's face was solemn. He formed a divine art with both hands and desperately activated the primordial chaos bell to protect himself. He had already suffered a few losses at the hands of Ji Tianxing. He did not dare to be careless and underestimate his enemy again. He had to fight with all his strength. The golden scorching sun was about to hit the blood-red shield of the primordial chaos bell. At this time, Ji Tianxing suddenly turned his sword and slashed at the high priest not far away with all his strength. Sword of World Destruction. In order to kill with one blow, he did not hesitate to draw on the power of the five elements realm and slashed out a giant golden blade that was 3,000 feet long. The poor high priest was sitting cross-legged in the sky, using all his strength to suppress the soul-transferring poison. He could not escape at all. When he realized that death was coming and opened his eyes in horror, it was already too late. Chapter 3650. Boom! Following a deafening muffled explosion, the daylight sword struck the blood light shield fiercely. The sword light that was like a golden sun was shattered into pieces on the spot, scattering divine light fragments all over the sky. And that blood light shield only shook violently for dozens of times and cracked open a few shallow cracks. The primordial chaos bell trembled a few times and quickly returned to normal. Tao Yongxing, who was hiding in the blood light shield, was also safe and sound. However, this result was destined. Under the situation where Ji Tianxing did not use his ultimate killer move, it was impossible to shake the defense of the king-level top-grade god artifact. Even if he used all his trump cards, he would not be able to break the primordial chaos bell's shield. In other words, as long as Tao Yongxing hid in the primordial chaos bell, he would be in an invincible position. Therefore, no one paid attention to the power of the daylight sword. Tao Yongxing and Shueshang's gazes were gathered on the high priest. Boom! The massive blade of golden light, which was 30,000 feet long, slashed toward the high priest with an apocalyptic might that seemed capable of slicing through all matter. There was a bloodlight shield around him, which was temporarily set up by Shueshang to block the sword rain attack. After being hit by the golden light giant sword, the blood light shield collapsed directly, exploding into fragments all over the sky. Immediately after, the golden light giant sword sent the high priest's divine saber flying, sending it flying 10,000 feet away. The high priest, who lost 2 layers of defense, was finally hit by the golden light giant sword and his figure was swallowed by the golden light. The moment he was hit by the golden light giant sword, he was like ice and snow under the scorching sun, melting rapidly. He was not split into 2 halves, nor was he fragmented into pieces. Instead, he directly turned into ashes, his divine body rapidly melting. Seeing this scene, Shueshang and Tao Yongxing's pupils constricted, their eyes revealing deep shock and fear. Heavens, the power of this sword technique is actually so terrifying? The high priest is a 9th stage realm god king at any rate, he was actually insta-killed by him? Both of them were terrified, not only because the high priest was insta-killed. It was also because both of them felt a great threat from that sacred and resplendent sword light. The power of that sword technique was enough to threaten their lives. The two of them couldn't help but think and analyze. If Ji Tianxing had used this sword technique against them, would they have been able to block it? This question seemed to be very difficult to answer. It wasn't until the two of them looked at the life-saving artifact beside them that they both breathed a sigh of relief. Tao Yongxing had the primordial chaos bell, while Xueshang had the Qiongqi ancestors' indestructible golden body. With a divine artifact of this level in hand, unless the God Emperor, who had surpassed the divine king level, made a move, it would be very difficult to kill them. After a short while, the deafening noise gradually disappeared, and the fragments of divine light that filled the sky also dissipated. With a wave of his hand, Ji Tianxing grabbed a godhead covered in cracks and stored it into his spatial ring. Clearly, the severely damaged godhead belonged to the high priest. Strictly speaking, it was only his body that had been destroyed and his godhead that had been severely damaged. He hadn't died yet. However, his godhead had been shattered, and his consciousness had fallen into a coma. Falling into Ji Tianxing's hands was equivalent to dying. At this point, only Ji Tianxing, Xueshang, and Tao Yongxing were left in the heaven-destroying sword formation. The atmosphere became extremely solemn. Only the whistling of sword radiance that filled the sky and the muffled sound of constantly colliding with the Qiongqi's skeleton and the crimson light shield was left. Now that things had developed to this stage, Tao Yongxing was completely disheartened and gradually calmed down. Other than him and the two elders who had stayed behind to guard the star-devouring cave, the high priest and a few other elders had died under Ji Tianxing's sword one after another. In addition, close to 1,000 clan members and young elites had also been killed by Ji Tianxing. To the Taotai clan, this was second only to the calamity of clan annihilation. The loss was extremely tragic. Not to mention that the Taotai clan needed a few thousand years to recover, it was hard to say whether they could maintain their position as one of the 7 noble families of the Demon Clan in the future. At this moment, Tao Yongxing's heart was really dead, and he was completely hopeless. He swore that no matter what, he would never be angered by Ji Tianxing and would never step out of the primordial chaos bell's protective shield. Otherwise, Ji Tianxing would most likely kill him too. If it was in the past, he would never have such thoughts and would even think it was ridiculous. But now, after experiencing a series of setbacks and seeing Ji Tianxing's strength and means, he had to be vigilant. He stayed in the bloody light shield and secretly operated his power to maintain the primordial chaos bell's defense. His eyes stared viciously at Ji Tianxing, but he did not say a word. No matter what he said now, he would only be humiliating himself. On the other side, Xueshang had the same thoughts and attitude. While maintaining the Qiongqi ancestors' indestructible golden body, he operated his power to suppress the right guardian's injury. He looked at Ji Tianxing expressionlessly and remained silent. Although the left guardian and 3 elders had been killed by Ji Tianxing, and 38 elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall had also died under Ji Tianxing's sword. But compared to the tragic experience of the Taotai clan, he suddenly felt that the loss of the Qiongqi clan was nothing. In fact, he even rejoiced at his own wit. Fortunately, I knew that this boy's strength was high, so I only brought the right guardian and 20 elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall. If I also brought a few elders, I'm afraid they would all be killed by him now, right? Thinking of this, Xueshang was secretly relieved, but also very regretful. He hated the damn Tao Yongxing and regretted that he had agreed to help. If he could turn back time, he would never help the Taotai clan for benefits. It seems that you plan to hide in your turtle shell and don't dare to take action. Don't you want to avenge your clansmen? Ji Tianxing looked at Tao Yongxing and then at Xueshang, and a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. His tone was somewhat mocking. Xueshang and Tao Yongxing's faces flushed red, and they were quite ashamed and angry. But they kept their rationality and suppressed their shame and anger, glaring angrily at Ji Tianxing. Bastard, the Taotai clan will never forget such a deep blood feud. Even if you can be rampant for a while, our Taotai clan has existed since ancient times and is still glorious and prosperous. There is a reason for that. One day we will return today's humiliation tenfold, no, 100-fold. Tao Yongxing stared at Ji Tianxing, gritting his teeth and swearing. Ji Tianxing glanced at him and sneered. In that case, I can only cut the weeds and eliminate the roots to prevent future troubles. You have the primordial chaos bell, so you can hide in it to protect yourself. But the Taotai clan in the devouring star cave, humph. There was no need for Ji Tianxing to say the following words. Everyone understood what he meant. Tao Yongxing's face suddenly turned pale, and his heart was in his throat. How dare you! He subconsciously roared and pointed at Ji Tianxing. He was so angry that his entire body was trembling. The divine power in his body went berserk, and his blood flowed backward. He almost vomited blood again. Ha ha ha! Ji Tianxing just sneered disdainfully and did not say much. But Tao Yongxing and Xue Shang knew that not only did he dare, but he could also do it. Chapter 36:51. After a while, Tao Yongxing's aura weakened. Now he was trapped in the heaven-destroying sword formation, and the high priest and 3 elders under him were killed. Not only did he not have any help, but he also did not have the confidence to fight Ji Tianxing head-on. He did not even know if he could break the sword formation and escape. He really did not have the qualifications or the confidence to threaten Ji Tianxing. If Ji Tianxing really wanted to destroy the star-devouring cave, he could only go crazy in the sword formation and was powerless to stop it. So, he suddenly regretted that he should have thought about those ruthless words in his heart and never shouted them out in front of his face. It was too wrong, too stupid. Seeing that Tao Yongxing had suddenly become dispirited and seemed to have given up, Ji Tianxing revealed a regretful expression. What? Weren't you full of murderous intent just now, threatening to make me pay back 10 times, 100 times? Tao Yongxing lowered his head and did not look him in the eyes. He was full of anger and did not say a word. But his fists were clenched tightly in his sleeves, and his nails pierced into his palms. It was obvious that he was furious. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said expressionlessly, Although I am very interested in those mineral veins in the star-devouring cave, the heavens have mercy. However, the heavens have the virtue of cherishing life, and this prince is not a bloodthirsty person. Tao Yongxing, I'll give you one last chance. Admit your guilt and surrender to me now, apologize, and swear in the name of the heavenly Tao that the Taotai clan will not take revenge on me. Only then will I spare your life and spare the Taotai clan's life. Tao Yongxing subconsciously raised his head and glared at Ji Tianxing. He was about to reject this extremely humiliating request. However, the curses that he was about to blurt out were forcefully swallowed back down. He had already suffered so many losses, and he had learned to be smart. Ji Tianxing just said that this was the last chance. Although in Tao Yongxing's eyes, he was sinister, despicable, cruel, and vicious. But there was one thing that he had to admit: he was a man of his words. So, Tao Yongxing did not dare to be impulsive, and he did not dare to gamble the fate of the Taotai clan. He suppressed the anger and humiliation in his heart and clenched his fists so tightly that they creaked. He was hesitating and weighing the pros and cons in his heart. Ji Tianxing did not force him. He said in an indifferent tone, "You have 10 breaths of time to consider. Think carefully before you make a decision." After saying this, he looked at the Qiongqi skeleton not far away, and his gaze fell on Xue Shang. "Patriarch Xue Shang, it's time for you to make a decision." Xue Shang looked at him expressionlessly. He shook his head and said, "Long Tian, you have already taken the initiative. Victory is within your grasp. Why do you have to ridicule me like this?" In the face of such obvious weakness, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but frown and ask, "What? This king has killed the left guardian and 3 elders of the Qiongqi clan. Are you not going to avenge them?" Xue Shang's expression was solemn as he said in a calm tone, "If it were some other small fry, I would naturally avenge my clan. But you are the dragon race's god king, your status is different. Our clan has always followed the lead of the Dragon Clan. Since ancient times, we have also worked hard for the Dragon Clan and made a lot of contributions. So, this king will not make an enemy of you." Ji Tianxing smiled and asked, You are quite patient. You know how to stop your losses in time. Shueshang said in a serious tone. Of course, I just don't want to make an enemy of the Dragon Clan and cause a rift between our two clans. I am not afraid of you. No matter how many tricks you have up your sleeves, no matter how many divine abilities you have, I have my ancestors' indestructible golden body, so I am invincible. Although it is not a Khanate treasure, it is comparable to the primordial bell of chaos. It has protected our clan for tens of thousands of years without decline. Ji Tianxing looked at the indestructible golden body carefully and nodded. Yes, this is true. Patriarch Qiongqi's indestructible golden body is comparable to a Khanate treasure. If you insist on hiding in the indestructible golden body, this king can't do anything to you. He added in his heart, maybe, only when I reach the upper-level Divine King or the Burial of Heaven sword is restored to the king level can I destroy Patriarch Qiongqi's indestructible golden body. After a pause, he asked Shueshang, but have you thought about it? If you don't take revenge, how will you explain to your clansmen? Shueshang said expressionlessly, this is my fault. If I didn't covet the benefits promised by the Taotai clan and rashly agree to help, there wouldn't be such twists and turns. I will explain to my clansmen and ask for forgiveness, and take this as a warning. Tao Yongxing, who was not far away, heard the conversation clearly. Seeing Shueshang admit defeat and retreat, he immediately glared at him and asked coldly, Shueshang, what do you mean? You actually admitted defeat and surrendered to him? Have you forgotten our agreement and the conditions that I promised you? Shueshang looked at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, this is the grudge between the Taotai clan and Long Tian. I am only here to help. How can I make a decision for you? Resist or admit defeat, it's all up to you. If you think it's inappropriate, then you go first. I will abide by the agreement. You! Tao Yongxing was so angry that his eyes turned black. A mouthful of blood surged to his throat, but he could only swallow it back. Shueshang's meaning was clear. You started this. I am only here to help. If you can do it, then do it. However, Tao Yongxing couldn't and didn't dare to do it. He almost sacrificed all the elites of the Taotai clan and still couldn't hurt Ji Tianxing, let alone take revenge. On the other hand, Ji Tianxing didn't even reveal his identity, background, or backing. He could defeat the Taotai clan single-handedly. Tao Yongxing really didn't dare to make trouble. He was afraid that if he continued to be entangled, the entire Taotai clan would be reduced to ashes. At this time, Ji Tianxing looked at him and said expressionlessly, Tao Yongxing, 10 breaths time is up. In other words, it's time for you to declare your position. Tao Yongxing was silent. He lowered his head and endured the endless humiliation and anger. His body was trembling. After a long time, he slowly raised his head and looked at Ji Tianxing expressionlessly. He said in a dull tone, I, Tao Yongxing, represent the Taotai clan to admit defeat and apologize to Long Tian. This matter was because the Taotai clan was greedy and tried to plunder Long Tian's dragon bloodline. It led to this series of tragedies. This is my clan's own fault. I apologize to Long Tian and admit my mistake. After saying that, he cupped his fists and bowed to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said calmly, Yes, and the heavenly oath. Tao Yongxing slowly straightened his body and endured the endless humiliation and anger. He looked up at the sky and closed his eyes. He said in a low and solemn voice, The heavenly Tao is above. The 35th clan leader of the Taotai clan, Tao Yongxing, now swears to the heavenly Tao. Today's matter, the Taotai clan and Long Tian will be written off. The Taotai clan will never take revenge on Long Tian in the future. If there is a violation of this oath, the Taotai clan's bloodline will be severed and they will be reduced to ashes. As his voice fell, there seemed to be a feeling in the unseen above the 9 heavens. Lightning flashed above the sky, but it quickly returned to calmness. Clearly, the heavenly oath had been completed. After Tao Yongxing finished swearing the oath with a trembling voice, 2 lines of blood tears actually gushed out of his eyes and slid down his aged cheeks. Chapter 36:52. Tao Yongxing was forced to such a state. He was really disheartened and had nothing to live for. The Taotai clan had suffered a great loss, but he had to admit that he deserved it and was forced to swear that he would not take revenge. Xueshang saw all this with his own eyes, and he could only sympathize with him. His heart was filled with sadness and helplessness. He believed that after the Taotai clan suffered such a blow, they would not be able to recover and fall into a trough. Even Tao Yongxing's will and mental state would collapse, and his will would be depressed for a long time. It seemed that this was not a bad thing for the Cheongqi clan. They could take advantage of this opportunity to expand their territory and sphere of influence, and take over the resources controlled by the Taotai clan? This idea is not bad. I'll go back and think about it carefully. Xueshang was thinking about these dirty things when Ji Tianxing's voice suddenly rang in his ears. Clan leader Xueshang, it's your turn now. Xueshang suddenly woke up and looked at Ji Tianxing in shock and anger. What do you mean? I've already admitted defeat and asked for peace. If we give each other a way out, won't it be over? You're so aggressive and pestering, what do you want to do? Seeing Xueshang's unwilling face, Ji Tianxing pointed at Tao Yongxing, who was still looking at the sky with his eyes closed, and said, like him, go through the formalities to make me feel at ease. Otherwise, I don't mind going to the Nebula Cave. You! Xueshang almost couldn't help but curse. His whole face turned purple, and he was so angry that his lungs were surging. Just now, he was still sympathizing with Tao Yongxing. He didn't expect that in the blink of an eye it would be his turn. After being beaten so badly, he still had to apologize and swear to heaven that he would not take revenge. This was simply stepping on the Cheongqi clan's face like the bottom of a shoe. No one bullied people like this. Xueshang's face was gloomy. He stared at Ji Tianxing angrily and said in a cold tone, Long Tian, my clan has no deep hatred with you. Why do you have to be so aggressive? You must know that if you don't go too far, it will be easier in the future. I took a step back. Not because I'm afraid of you, don't force me to take action. Without waiting for him to finish, Ji Tianxing revealed a smile and said expectantly, That's good. This king was afraid that you wouldn't be willing to help. I'll kill you first and then destroy the Nebula Paradise. This is definitely a great deal. Xueshang fell silent when he saw how eager and impatient he was. He finally understood that Ji Tianxing really hoped that he and Tao Yongxing could be more unyielding and fight to the death. In this way, Ji Tianxing could justifiably kill the two of them, then wipe out the Taotai and Cheongqi clans and plunder their wealth. This guy was simply a lunatic. Xueshang cursed in his heart. He really wanted to slap himself. At such a crucial moment, who cared about face and dignity? If they really fell out, the Cheongqi tribe would definitely be at a disadvantage. With this thought, Xueshang could only imitate Tao Yongxing and reveal a grief-stricken expression. He bowed to Ji Tianxing from afar and said in a low voice, Supreme being Long Tian, this king was deceived by Tao Yongxing and lost my rationality due to greed. That's why I attacked you. Here, this king apologizes to you. Please forgive me. Ji Tianxing nodded and pointed to the sky. Continue. Xueshang's heart was filled with grief and indignation. However, he could only endure the humiliation and close his eyes to look at the sky. His voice was low and trembling as he slowly recited, Heavenly Tao above, the 36th clan leader of the Cheongqi tribe, Xueshang, when he recited the Heavenly Tao oath with a trembling voice like Tao Yongxing, his entire body and hands trembled. It was not fear, but anger and humiliation. Extreme humiliation. This was definitely the most humiliating day in Xueshang's life. Although he did not shed tears of blood like Tao Yongxing. His grief-stricken expression was definitely from the bottom of his heart. After Xueshang made the oath, Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and revealed a satisfied expression. Seeing that you are so sincere, this matter will end here. The two clan leaders put the overall situation first and endured humiliation to survive. It's really touching that you have sacrificed so much for your people. Shueshang's face was twitching. He wished he could strangle Ji Tianxing to death. As for Tao Yongxing, he was still looking up at the sky. The tears of blood on his face had not dried, and his entire person was like a stone statue. Obviously, he was still immersed in a spiritual world filled with endless grief and humiliation. He was unwilling to face reality and could not hear everything around him. To put it simply, he was autistic. Seeing Tao Yongxing like this, Shueshang sighed. I can't count on this old fellow. I can only do it myself. Therefore, he looked at Ji Tianxing expressionlessly and asked, Long Tian, we have already made the heavenly Tao oath. The grudge between the two clans and you is over. You should also release the sword formation and let us leave, right? In addition, you have to give us the innate demon soul transference poison that we have been poisoned with. Unfortunately, before Shueshang could finish speaking, Ji Tianxing turned and flew away. He floated away and passed through the light wall of the sword formation. He only left a sentence that echoed in the sky. You can break the sword formation yourselves. Antidote? When I studied this poison, I did not study the antidote at all. As his voice fell, his figure appeared at the top of the sword formation. He waved his hand, and hundreds of streams of light flew out from the lake around the sword formation. Swish, swish, swish. With a wave of his sleeve, he collected the hundreds of streams of light and turned them into shooting stars that flew across the sky and quickly disappeared. Inside the sword formation, Shueshang glared at Ji Tianxing's back and watched him disappear into the sky. He was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Damned thief, damn it! Break the sword formation by himself? This is a king-level sword formation. Even if I join forces with Tao Yongxing, it will take at least 3 to 5 days to break it, right? What's more, Tao Yongxing is muddle-headed now. How can I break it by myself? As for the antidote, who doesn't prepare the antidote when refining poison? Who are you lying to? Shueshang roared in his heart, cursing and complaining crazily. But unfortunately, Ji Tianxing had already gone far away and could not hear him. After a long time, Shueshang calmed down his surging anger and gradually calmed down. He put away Qiongqi's indestructible golden body and placed the right guardian in the divine artifact before flying toward Tao Yongxing. Although there were still 20,000 giant swords flying and shuttling in the sword formation, they were still attacking. The power of the giant swords was obviously weakened. Shueshang could resist them with the protective divine light, so his life was not in danger. Hey, old Tao, that kid has escaped. It's over. Shueshang flew to the bloody light shield and stopped, calling Tao Yongxing. However, Tao Yongxing turned a deaf ear and still remained like a statue. Shueshang could not help but frown and said angrily, Old Tao, that kid has already left. Stop pretending. Tao Yongxing still did not respond. Shueshang gradually became angry and said angrily, If you want to be a statue, then continue to be a statue. I'm going to find a way to break the formation and leave. By the way, the conditions and rewards you promised me cannot be less. Tao Yongxing's body suddenly trembled, and he woke up. He stared at Shueshang with burning eyes, his face ferocious, and said in a trembling voice, No, I can't just let it go. I have a way. We can take advantage of a loophole. Chapter 36:53. Are you crazy? We just made a heavenly oath, and you still want to take revenge on him? Shueshang looked at Tao Yongxing in shock, and his expression was very interesting. After saying that, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He frowned and said, I am talking to you nicely, and you are pretending to be a statue. When I mention the conditions and revenge, you quickly change the topic. Old Tao, I think you want to go back on your words, right? Tao Yongxing completely ignored his words. He looked like he had gone mad. His face was ferocious, and his lips trembled as he said, "Although we were forced to make a heavenly oath, it was only a temporary measure. But that's only a temporary solution. We can think of another way. We have suffered such heavy losses and humiliation. Are we going to swallow it? No. Absolutely not. The Taotai clan has not suffered such setbacks and humiliation for tens of thousands of years since ancient times. I can't lose the face of my ancestors. No matter what, I can't take this lying down. I will definitely tear him into pieces and turn him into ashes." Seeing that he was full of bloody light and emotional, Xueshang hurriedly waved his hand and persuaded, "Old Tao, calm down first. Listen to me. The Taotai clan has suffered heavy losses, and you have suffered so much. It is reasonable for you to lose control of your emotions. But look at me. Am I not the same as you, suffering heavy losses and losing face? But I won't be mad like you. I can still stay calm and collected." As he said that, Xueshang patted his chest, and he looked like he wanted Tao Yongxing to learn from him. But how could Tao Yongxing listen? He was still immersed in a state of madness. His eyes were fierce, and he said in an emotional tone, "Xueshang, although we made a heavenly oath, the two clans can't take revenge on him. But we can take advantage of the loophole of the heavenly oath. Our clansmen won't take action against him, but we can ask others to do it." Xueshang frowned and asked subconsciously, "Who do you want to ask?" Tao Yongxing said without hesitation, "First, we will ask more than 30 territories in the northern half of the continent. We will offer a huge reward in the name of the 10,000 Demon Alliance, and ask all the territory lords and divine king masters to kill that bastard. Second, we will contact the 10,000 Demon Alliance and ask their experts to help. Finally, we will go to the mysterious cave and ask the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor to seek justice and take revenge for us." Xueshang was stunned. He frowned and asked hesitantly, "This is your idea and plan? Although it sounds feasible, what does it have to do with taking advantage of a loophole? Even if we don't use the name of the 10,000 Demon Alliance, aren't we still taking revenge on Long Tian?" Tao Yongxing's, and he said, his voice, "Of course, this is a loophole. We won't let the people of the two clans attack, including you and me. We're just borrowing a knife to kill them. He. But Tao Yongxing's expression was solemn as he said in a low voice, "If we don't give it a try, who knows if it will work? In any case, I can't swallow this anger. I would rather die than endure such humiliation." "Of course not," Xueshang answered without hesitation. However, after a moment of silence, he asked, "Let's not talk about asking the 10,000 Demon Alliance and the Domain Lords to help. You want to complain to the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor? Don't forget, Long Tian is also an expert of the dragon race. How can the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor help us fight against his own race?" Tao Yongxing sneered, "Ha ha! There are too many dragons in the dragon realm. They are like a piece of iron. Don't they have conflicts and kill each other? Although Long Tian is from the dragon race, we have never heard of his name. We have also never seen him in the mysterious cave. This means that he has nothing to do with the mysterious cave and the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. Long Tian is cruel and ruthless. He killed the people of the Cheongqi and Taotai races and brought disaster to the Star Source continent. As the master of the Star Source continent, shouldn't the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor suppress the evil and restore peace to the continent?" Xueshang hesitated for a moment and nodded. "What you said makes sense." Tao Yongxing quickly said in a serious tone, "If that's the case, then you agree with my plan? What are we waiting for? Why don't we hurry up and act? If we delay any longer, I'm afraid that kid will run away again." As he spoke, Tao Yongxing impatiently took out his communication jade slip and was about to send a message to the Thousand Demon Alliance. Wait! Xue Shang finally realized that something was wrong and remembered something very important. He quickly stopped Tao Yongxing and said in a serious tone, "Before we act, you have to give me an explanation. In order to help you kill Long Tian, I killed the Left Protector, 3 elders, and 38 elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall. You have to fulfill the conditions and rewards you promised me first, right?" Tao Yongxing was stunned for a moment. Anger flashed in his eyes. However, he suppressed his anger and said expressionlessly, "Xue Shang, don't you trust me? Since I agreed to your conditions and revenge, I will fulfill my promise. However, this will have to wait until Long Tian is killed and we have avenged him." "That won't do." Xue Shang refused and said with conviction, "My clan has sacrificed so much, and you haven't even given us a single divine stone so far. You have to pay 300 billion worth of ores first, so that I can use them to comfort my clan members and arrange the funeral of the Left Protector and the 3 elders. As for the other 2 conditions, I can be generous and give you some time." "You are looting a burning house." Tao Yongxing glared at him and shouted angrily, "My clan's high priest and several elders have just died, and thousands of clan members and elites have just died. At this sad moment, as an ally of my clan, you not only don't understand and comfort us, but also take the opportunity to blackmail us, Xue Shang. Has your conscience been eaten by a dog? I was really blind in the past to form an alliance with you and treat you as a reliable ally." Tao Yongxing was extremely angry and emotional. His face was distorted, and his beard and hair were dancing violently. Seeing him like this, Xue Shang quickly waved his hand and explained. However, he thought in his heart, "Haha, this old man has been hiding from me before. I didn't expect that when Long Tian caused havoc in the star-devouring grotto heaven, he had already killed thousands of Taotai clansmen. No wonder Tao Yongxing paid such a huge price to ask me for help. In this way, there are not many Taotai clansmen left, and their core forces have been severely damaged. Now they are almost crippled. Even if I don't get any rewards, I can still take over their properties and plunder their wealth." Thinking of this, Xue Shang sneered in his heart and gradually perfected the next plan. Chapter 3654. After Xue Shang's persuasion and explanation, Tao Yongxing finally calmed down. The 2 of them haggled for a while. In the end, Tao Yongxing paid 100 billion ores first and ended the dispute. Then, the 2 of them started to discuss how to get the Thousand Demon Alliance and the 30-plus region masters to help. The regions in the northwest of the Astral Source continent were far away and were not as prosperous as the central regions. However, each region had 3 to 5 God King experts. The region masters and deputy region masters had the strength of a middle God King. If they could make use of these God Kings, they would be a force to be reckoned with. With the bounty in the name of the Thousand Demon Alliance and the reputation of the Cheongqi and Taotai clans, it would not be difficult to mobilize those God Kings. After all, the Cheongqi and Taotai clans were very famous in the northwest of the Astral Source continent. What troubled Xue Shang and Tao Yongxing was how to get the Thousand Demon Alliance to help. The Thousand Demon Alliance was established more than 900 years ago and rose to prominence 500 years ago. The Alliance Master, Divine King Luoho, was said to be from another continent and was not a native of the Astral Source continent. This person's identity and background were mysterious, but he was very powerful. In the past 1,000 years, only 2 peak God Kings had appeared in the Astral Source continent, and they were not weaker than the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. And Divine King Luoho was one of them. The Thousand Demon Alliance was as its name suggested. It did not discriminate between races or bloodlines. As long as they met the requirements and passed the Thousand Demon Alliance's test, they could join. Since ancient times, the difference between bloodlines was deeply ingrained in the hearts of demons. However, 99% of the ordinary demons hated it and were powerless to change it. Therefore, when the Thousand Demon Alliance appeared, it caused a huge commotion in the astral source continent. Billions of demon experts cheered. Experts of the demon race from different species were eager to join the Myriad Demon Alliance and make contributions to the development of the Myriad Demon Alliance. In just a few hundred years, the Thousand Demon Alliance had become one of the top 3 factions in the astral source continent. Now, the Thousand Demon Alliance had more than 1 million members and 99% of them were heavenly gods and above. There were countless god monarchs and more than 100 god kings in the alliance. Even the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor of the mystical grotto heaven was wary of the Thousand Demon Alliance and did not dare to suppress or control them. Xue Shang and Tao Yongxing had met the upper echelons of the Thousand Demon Alliance and knew a few elders and protectors. However, this matter was of great importance. They felt that it was necessary to contact the Myriad Demon Alliance's Alliance Master, God King Luoho. However, they did not know God King Rahu, nor did they have God King Rahu's transmission jade slip. After discussing for a while, Xue Shang and Tao Yongxing unanimously decided to send a message to the Great Elder of the 10,000 Demon League to explain the matter. God Divine King Luoho was God. Therefore, Tao Yongxing prepared to send a message to the Grand Elder of the Demon Alliance. Xue Shang stretched out his hand to stop him. He frowned and said, "Old Tao, even if we want to plan this, can't we break this sword formation first? Inside the sword formation, you and I have to circulate our divine power at all times to resist the sword light's attack. Moreover, you and I have both been poisoned by the innate fiend soul transference poison, and the right protector is still circulating his energy to resist the poison. If we don't leave the sword formation soon, the poison will break out. Our lives will be in danger then." Tao Yongxing was stunned. He looked at the sword light and nodded. "Okay. You're right. Let's break the sword formation first. But it's a king-grade god formation. You and I are not good at formations. I'm afraid it will take a long time to break it. Even if it takes a long time, we have to get out first." Xue Shang was very anxious. He looked impatient. Tao Yongxing could not fall out with Xue Shang for the sake of his revenge plan. He could only endure his irritation and agree to break the formation first. Then, he put away the communication jade slip and worked with Xue Shang to break the sword formation. The two flew hundreds of laps around the sword formation and used their secret arts to observe the structure of the sword formation. This was only the first step of breaking the sword formation, but it took them an entire day. Tao Yongxing was impatient. He planned to let Xue Shang observe the sword formation while he contacted the Thousand Demon Alliance. Fortunately, after a day, Xue Shang finally understood the structure of the sword formation. Then, he and Tao Yongxing worked hard to figure out how to break the formation. This was the second step of breaking the formation. It took them another 2 days. Tao Yongxing became more and more anxious. He was exhausted. Fortunately, Xue Shang thought of 3 ways to break the formation, and they all seemed to work. So, he pulled Tao Yongxing and started to cast spells to break the formation. This was the third step of breaking the formation. It was the last step and also the most difficult step. The two of them tried their best and used all their skills. They spent 3 days but still could not break the formation. Xue Shang had tried all 3 methods, but none of them could be broken. Tao Yongxing was angry. He proposed to activate the primordial chaos bell and Qiongqi ancestors' indestructible golden body to directly break the sword formation. Anyway, the power of the sword formation was gradually weakening. It was weaker than before. Xue Shang could not persuade him and could only agree to this reckless decision. The two of them activated their clan treasures and attacked the sword formation with all their might. As a result, the sword formation shook violently. A loud sound shook the sky, and divine light burst out, but it did not break. The two of them attacked continuously for 2 hours. They were tired and panting, but they still could not break the sword formation. Tao Yongxing gave up and said with a black face, "Xueshang, you continue to study the way to break the formation. I will send a message to the Demon Alliance." 6 days have passed. This matter cannot be delayed any longer. After that, he completely ignored Xueshang's advice. He hid under the protection of the primordial chaos bell and sent a message to the Demon Alliance. Xueshang could only fight alone and continue to think of a way to break the formation. Tao Yongxing carefully and tactfully expressed his thoughts. Then, he entered a message into the jade slip. He checked twice to make sure that it would not cause a misunderstanding or anger the Demon Alliance. Only then did he send out the jade slip. Next, he waited patiently. He did not know whether the Great Elder of the Demon Alliance was busy or discussing with someone. After a full 4 hours, the Great Elder of the Demon Alliance sent back a message. Patriarchs Yongxing and Xueshang, I deeply sympathize with the difficulties and losses of the two clans. In the sphere of influence of the Demon Alliance, such a cruel and vicious person appeared. Even if he is a descendant of the Dragon Clan, we cannot tolerate it. Although our alliance master is in seclusion, I will not disturb him for such a small matter. But I can decide this matter based on the discussion between me and the elders. However, the Demon Alliance has its own rules. We will never interfere in the grievances of other forces and powerhouses. Even if you put up a bounty in the name of the Demon Alliance, it will damage the reputation of the Demon Alliance. But for the sake of the cooperation between the two patriarchs and me many times, I can make the decision to give you some face. Chapter 36:55. Ba. Hu Xinyue, this be *tca. She said it in such a dignified way. Isn't she just asking for a sky-high price? After reading the jade slip, Tao Yongxing was so angry that his face turned purple, and he couldn't help but curse. Xueshang, who was thinking hard about the way to break the array, was awakened by him and couldn't help curling his lips. The 10,000 Demon Alliance is not the Relief Society. It is also a ruthless organization. You said you wanted to ask the 1,000 Demon Alliance for help before, and I knew it was not reliable. Tao Yongxing turned his head and glared at him, and said with a black face, I will take care of this matter. You just need to break the sword array. The implication was to let Xueshang mind his own business. Xueshang shrugged and sneered. Okay, I will only break the array. You negotiate with the 1,000 Demon Alliance. No matter what the result is, it is your business. I am just helping you. Tao Yongxing's body stiffened, and he asked with a black face, Xueshang, what do you mean? Do you mean that my Taotai clan has to fulfill all the conditions of the 1,000 Demon Alliance? Otherwise? Xueshang spread out his hands and asked, Do you want me to pay? Tao Yongxing was so angry that his whole body trembled, and he scolded, Xueshang, do you have any shame? Is this revenge for me? This is about your and my dignity, the face of the Taotai clan and the Cheongqi clan. Since it is revenge for our two clans, of course we have to pay together. Xueshang waved his hand and said indifferently, Don't drag me into this. The biggest loss and the most humiliating is you and the Taotai clan. I don't care. I am willing to help you because of the conditions you agreed to. If you want me to pay, then I would rather not take revenge. You! Tao Yongxing was so angry that he pointed at Xueshang with trembling fingers, but he couldn't say a word. At this moment, he finally saw the true face of Xueshang. He secretly swore in his heart that from now on, he would cut off contact with the Cheongqi clan and would never help each other again. Especially Xueshang, he must cut off all ties. At this time, Xueshang sneered in his heart. Ha! The trouble you caused me so much trouble, and you still want to drag me down? For the sake of our past relationship, I won't fall out with you for now. After this is over, let's see how I'll take your territory and resources. In the future, the star-devouring paradise will be mine. Previously, the two of them appeared to be united on the surface but were actually divided at heart. Now they were completely at odds with each other. Fortunately, the two of them still restrained themselves and did not shed all pretenses of cordiality. They both kept silent and went about their business. 2 hours later, Shueshang finally figured out the correct way to break it. With the help of Patriarch Qiongqi's indestructible golden body, he began to break the heaven-destroying sword formation. 4 hours later, Tao Yongxing and Hu Xinyue had negotiated many times and finally reached an agreement. He had to pay 400 billion in minerals and 9 star-swallowing flowers before Hu Xinyue agreed to offer a high bounty in the name of the 10,000 Demon Alliance. Of course, Tao Yongxing had to pay for the astronomical treasures and resources required for the bounty himself. Hu Xinyue suggested that he take out 2 king-grade high-grade divine artifacts and 50 billion worth of ores as a reward. This was the only way to attract the godly kings of more than 30 domains and the experts of the Myriad Demon Alliance. Moreover, any participant who could provide clues and help would receive a reward worth 5 billion. This was the only way to fully mobilize the enthusiasm of the participants and ensure that the interception mission would be completed as soon as possible. In addition, the Myriad Demon Alliance would not send any experts to help Tao Yongxing carry out the interception mission. It was not that the Myriad Demon Alliance did not want to accept the mission, but Tao Yongxing could not afford it. Of course, if the godly kings of the Myriad Demon Alliance wanted to participate in the mission voluntarily, it would be a different matter. When this condition was agreed, Tao Yongxing's expression was wooden and his voice was trembling as he agreed. His heart was bleeding and he could not breathe. He held the communication jade slip in his hand and closed his eyes to look at the sky. He murmured with a miserable expression, "It's just a sky-high bounty in the name of the Myriad Demon Alliance. I actually have to spend 600 billion to get the permission of the Myriad Demon Alliance. The reward for the bounty will cost at least 200 billion. Even if I can successfully kill Long Tian, I will have to spend 800 billion. The Taotai clan was already in such a miserable state. Could they withstand such torment? Tao Yongxing calculated silently. This time, he had to empty the Taotai clan's treasury at least. He even had to dig up 7 or 8 mineral veins to plug this hole. This was bound to make the already miserable Taotai clan even worse. They would be completely dispirited and unable to recover. After taking a deep breath, Tao Yongxing thought of the even more outrageous price and could not help but roar. The Myriad Demon Alliance is one of the top 3 superforces in the continent. You actually asked for 2 trillion just to kill a high-level godly king of the Dragon Clan? Hu Xinyue. Why don't you King Rob? Not far away, Shueshang, who was focused on breaking the sword array, heard his sorrowful roar and could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth and laugh secretly. Ha! This old man is so angry that he has lost his mind. You can continue to act. Soon, the Taotai clan's foundation will be emptied. When the time comes, I'll see how you clean up the mess. Although the star-devouring cave was rich in mineral resources and had a unique environmental advantage, it had nurtured many star mineral veins. Those star mineral veins could not be grown in hundreds or thousands of years. A mature star mineral vein that was worth hundreds of billions usually needed 3,000 to 5,000 years to grow. The previous clan leaders of the Taotai clan were not good at management and financial management. Basically, they had been losing money. Although the star-devouring cave had many mineral veins, after thousands of years of losses, the number had been decreasing. Shueshang estimated that in the star-devouring cave, there were only 60 to 70 mineral veins left. That was the limit. Thinking of this, he suddenly thought of a problem and suddenly felt a little distressed. Tao Yongxing has gone mad with anger. He did not care about the long-term plans of the future. He did not hesitate to pay a huge price to take revenge. If he loses all the mineral veins in the star-devouring cave, Even if I rob the star-devouring cave in the future, won't it be a desert? Starting from scratch, from nothing to something, won't I have to wait thousands of years for a new mineral vein to be born? Thinking of this, Xueshang suddenly felt his chest tighten. His eyes were full of hatred as he looked at Tao Yongxing. After leaving the gushing sun lake, Ji Tianxing continued to fly north. He thought that since Xueshang and Tao Yongxing had both made the heavenly oath, this grudge was considered to be over. Next, he continued to rush to the Golden Rock Clan's 9 mystical cave. It should be very smooth. The sword of burial of heaven flew high in the sky. He entered the sword world again, and returned to the distorted spacetime to deal with the spoils of war. He was very satisfied with the result of the battle at the gushing sun lake. Fortunately, he had broken through before the battle and reached the 6th level of the Divine King realm. His strength had increased by 6 to 7 times. In addition, he had set up the sky-destroying sword formation in advance and the heaven-killing soul transference that he had carefully prepared. Only then could he catch Xueshang and Tao Yongxing off guard and completely suppress them. The gains of this battle were basically in line with his expectations. Chapter 3656. From the beginning, Ji Tianxing knew that Tao Yongxing had the primordial chaos bell, and Xueshang must also have a divine weapon of the same grade. In addition, these two patriarchs were old monsters who had cultivated for more than 20,000 years, and both had the strength of a 9th-level divine king. With his current strength, means, and equipment, it was basically impossible to kill Tao Yongxing and Xueshang. Only by using the sword formation ambush and poison sneak attack could he defeat and suppress the two of them. If it was a head-on confrontation, he would definitely not be able to defeat Xueshang and Tao Yongxing. So, from the beginning, his target was those elders and priests. In the distorted space, under the blood flame sacred tree, Ji Tianxing spent half a day before he finished sorting out the spatial rings of the High Priest and the 3 elders of the Taotai clan. All the wealth of these 4 divine kings was sorted by him and put into the spatial rings. With a rough estimate, the wealth of these 4 added up to more than 2 trillion. Most of the wealth was in the form of ores and divine stones, followed by elixirs, materials, and divine weapons. Seeing the many divine weapons refined by the High Priest and the 3 elders, Ji Tianxing could not help but shake his head and sigh. Sigh, star-devouring grotto heaven has so many ores and metal veins, it's simply a paradise for divine craftsmen. The attainments of these few fellows in artifact refinement simply can't be complimented. This is truly a reckless waste of God's gift. There were many precious metals and refining materials, and with advanced refining techniques, they could be refined into king-grade upper divine weapons. In the end, the High Priest and the 3 elders' refining skills were too ordinary, and they could not utilize the effects of the materials, only refining king-grade middle divine weapons. There was also a small portion of top refining materials that could be refined into king-grade upper divine weapons. In the end, the High Priest and the 3 elders used them to refine king-grade upper divine weapons, just to ensure the success rate of refining. If this was not a waste, then what was? Ji Tianxing decided that when he had time, he must reforge all the divine weapons they refined. At that time, he would use those precious refining materials to refine more and higher quality divine weapons. Of course, the matter of upgrading the Sword of Burial of Heaven could also be put on the agenda. Ji Tianxing had already calculated that it was impossible to restore the Sword of Burial of Heaven to king-grade upper divine weapon with the current conditions. He could only upgrade it to king-grade upper divine weapon, and he needed 22 precious refining materials. Fortunately, he had already accumulated a few materials, and this time, he plundered more than 10 materials from the spoils of war. The spoils of war. After careful calculation, he still needed 5 materials to upgrade the Sword of Burial of Heaven's quality. First, to upgrade the Sword of Burial of Heaven's quality. Then I can upgrade the sword's grade. Judging from the current situation, I might be able to recover to the 7th layer of the Divine King realm in a few years. Ji Tianqing silently calculated, and a gratified smile appeared on his face. However, what he was to do it. It was to recuperate and restore his divine power, and refine the high priest and the 3 elders' divinity fragments. He first took out a large number of dawn stones and divine pills to recuperate and restore his divine power. Half a month later, he had recovered to his peak condition and started to refine the 4 divinity fragments. Ever since he obtained the devouring divine ability, he had refined many monarch and god-king divinity fragments to upgrade his strength. This time, the divinity fragments he had obtained were of the highest grade and the most powerful ones. The 3 elders, including Tao Yuxing, actually all had the strength of a high divine king. The Grand Priest was a LV9 divine king realm expert. If Ji Tianqing had not broken through to the 6th level God King realm, set up the heaven-punishing sword formation, and used the heaven-killing soul transference poison, it was basically impossible for him to kill a 9th level God King. Therefore, this was the first time he had obtained a 9th level God King's divinity. In the process of refining the divinity fragments, the speed of his improvement had obviously increased. Especially the number of divine Tao laws contained in the 4 divinity fragments had far surpassed before. If it were in the past, Ji Tianqing only needed 1 to 2 months to refine the 4 divinity fragments. But this time, he actually spent a full half a year's time. Of course, after circulating and refining for half a year, the improvement effect was still very obvious. He had clearly just broken through to the 6th level God King realm, but reached the middle stage 6th level realm. His strength had increased by 3 times. At the same time, he stripped 30 types of divine Tao laws from the 4 divinity fragments. Currently, the number of divine Tao laws he had grasped had reached a shocking 610. Generally speaking, only 9th stage realm divine king experts were able to grasp so many divine Tao laws. Even if it was a peak divine king, they tended to only grasp 700 over laws too. The him in his previous life, as the world-renowned Kenshin, only grasped 1,000 divine Tao laws. And now, he was only at the 6th level God King realm, and already grasped so many divine Tao laws. What was certain was that the number of divine Tao laws he could grasp in this life absolutely far surpassed his past life. Ji Tianqing was in close seclusion in the distorted spacetime for more than half a year, but only 4 days had passed in the outside world. After ending cultivation, he asked the burial of heaven via divine soul voice transmission. Knowing that everything was normal and that nobody was tailing and pursuing, only then did he continue to cultivate with ease. Following that, he retrieved the 9 heavens divine cauldron from the divine medicine pavilion in Kenshin's tomb. Following that, he took out the materials and supplementary materials required to refine the 9 revolutions stellar rhythm pill and started refining the 9 revolutions stellar rhythm pill under the blood flame sacred tree. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged, his eyes clear and his expression unruffled like an ancient well. Both hands formed divine seals, firing out rays of divine light continuously. The 9 heavens divine cauldron transformed into a radius of 100 feet, suspended in midair, rotating slowly, treasure light flickering. Divine fire lingered inside the cauldron, with unparalleled berserk divine power surging. Ji Tianqing displayed his pill refining skills step by step, fully focused on refining the divine pill. The 9 revolutions stellar rhythm pill was one of the most difficult to refine among the high-grade king-level divine pills. He had to concentrate fully and not allow the slightest mistake. Of course, this would take a long time, definitely not something that could be completed in 2 or 3 months. Unknowingly, 9 days had passed since the battle between Ji Tianqing, Xueshang, and Tao Yongxing. With Xueshang's tireless efforts and Tao Yongxing's cooperation, the 2 of them finally broke through the heaven punishment sword formation. Of course, the main reason they could break through the heaven punishment sword formation in just a few days was that Ji Tianxing had taken hundreds of divine weapons and divine swords with him when he left. Those were all used as the foundation of the formation to strengthen the power of the sword formation. Since Ji Tianxing had taken them with him, the power of the sword formation would naturally weaken. Moreover, without more divine power injected into the sword formation and without Ji Tianxing to maintain the operation of the sword formation would only rely on itself to operate and absorb the divine power of heaven and earth, further weakening its power. Because of this, Xueshang and Tao Yongxing could quickly break through the heaven punishment sword formation. That's right, they had blasted a hole in the sword formation and escaped through the hole, not really breaking through the sword formation. If they wanted to break through the heaven punishment sword formation, they would have to spend at least 10 times more time. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 3657. Phew. I finally escaped. That goddamn bastard. There will come a day when I will grind his bones and scatter his ashes. Xueshang and Tao Yongxing, who had just escaped from the heaven punishment sword formation, stood above the surging sun lake, panting heavily. Xueshang was fine. He quickly took out a divine elixir to suppress the poison in his body and quickly recover his divine power. Tao Yongxing, on the other hand, turned his head to look at the heaven punishment sword formation above the lake and cursed angrily. Xueshang glanced at him and said indifferently, "Why do you only remember the words 'turn him into ashes'? In these 9 days, I have heard it more than 100 times. My ears are getting calluses. Old Tao, can you change the words?" Tao Yongxing did not speak. He just stared at him with a black face. Xueshang continued, "Besides, you and your clansmen can't kill him. Even if you want to kill Long Tian, it will be the masters of the various territories and the experts of the Thousand Demon Alliance. You want to turn him into ashes with your own hands? Just give up on that idea." Tao Yongxing said expressionlessly, "I have already made an agreement with the Great Elder, Hu Xinyue. No matter who killed Long Tian, he will be turned into ashes." "Is that so? Hu Xinyue is so easy to talk to?" Xueshang looked at him with surprise. Tao Yongxing's face twitched. He gritted his teeth and said, "The condition is to increase the bounty by another 5 billion. Xueshang could not help but roll his eyes. He cupped his hands and said, "You are rich. Take your time. I still have to go back and circulate my energy to treat the poison and help the right guardian dispel the poison and heal his injuries." After that, he bowed to Tao Yongxing and got ready to leave. Tao Yongxing frowned and asked with a gloomy face, "Xueshang, you really don't want to join forces with me? You are in a hurry to leave?" Xueshang spread out his hands and said, "Anyway, we can't do anything. You have also issued a bounty. Naturally, someone will kill him. Why should I stay here?" Tao Yongxing glanced at him coldly and said with a sneer, "Are you scared by him? Are you scared and don't dare to take revenge? Don't you care about the loss of the Cheongqi clan and the loss of face? Can you still hold your head high in the future?" Xueshang curled his lips disapprovingly and said, "Whatever you say, I will not participate in this matter. You have already tricked me once. How can I let you trick me a second time? If I could turn back time, I would rather give up your money and conditions than sacrifice the left guardian and the 3 elders." To Xueshang, the left protector and the 3 elders were his left and right arms. They were godly king experts that could not be bought with 2 trillion in wealth. Tao Yongxing looked at him with a sharp gaze and sneered, Very good. Xueshang, you may be shameless and have no backbone, but I do. Let's wait and see." After that, he left Shang. Xueshang looked at his back and shouted, "Don't forget the money you owe me and those conditions. You can't leave out a single one." "Humph." Tao Yongxing snorted and left without looking back. Xueshang sneered and thought to himself, "Old man, I will let you be proud for a few days. When I take over the star-devouring grotto heaven, I will see your expression." Then, he turned and left, returning to the star cloud grotto heaven. The northwest of the star source continent was originally remote. It was not as prosperous as the central part of the continent. Since the rise of the Myriad Demon League, this region had been peaceful for hundreds of years. The territorial masters of more than 30 regions, many first-rate forces, and experts were in awe of the Myriad Demon League. They did not dare to cause any trouble. However, in recent days, the northwest regions, which had been peaceful for hundreds of years, had become lively. This was because the Myriad Demon League had issued a bounty to the 32 regions in the northwest region. The Myriad Demon League had issued a bounty of 2 king-grade upper divine artifacts and 50 billion divine stones to kill a divine king of the dragon clan named Long Tian. This person had the strength of an upper divine king. He was sinister, cruel, and cunning. He was very difficult to deal with. It was recommended that only experts with the strength of a middle divine king and above could accept this mission. Anyone who completed the mission and killed Long Tian would be rewarded with another 50 billion divine stones. When this bounty spread in the 32 regions, it caused an uproar. Hundreds of millions of Demon Clan experts and experts discussed it. Countless people were asking about the background and identity of the Dragon Clan's divine king. Why did he have enmity with the Myriad Demon League? Where was this person now? For a moment, countless first-rate forces and divine king experts were discussing this matter. A bounty worth over 100 billion divine stones was the first time it had appeared in the past few hundred years. It caused countless divine king experts to be restless. Even those upper divine kings with hundreds of billions of divine stones were very tempted and looked forward to it. After all, this bounty was too generous and attractive. In the bounty that the Myriad Demon League had announced, there was a portrait of Long Tian and a brief introduction of him. However, anyone who had seen the bounty would remember it. After all, the latter part of the bounty stated that anyone who could provide Long Tian's whereabouts and information would be rewarded with hundreds of millions or billions of divine stone. Killing Long Tian was a matter for middle divine kings and upper divine kings. However, there was no threshold for providing information and clues. Anyone could do it. For a moment, the 32 regions in the northwestern region were in a frenzy. Countless divine lords, divine kings, and forces heard the news and moved to search for Long Tian's whereabouts. As for the name Long Tian, it quickly became known by everyone, and it was praised by everyone. During this period of time, countless Demon Clan citizens in the empires would see forces after forces searching for something all over the world. When the forces met, they would often mention the 2 words Long Tian. Suddenly, many Demon Clan citizens in the empires also began to spread rumors. Everyone believed that the divine king called Tianxing was a cruel and evil person who committed all kinds of crimes. The Myriad Demon League wanted to uphold justice for Tianxing. There were actually countless citizens praying and hoping that the Myriad Demon League would succeed as soon as possible and kill the evil Long Tian. 12 days after the battle at the Gushing Sun Lake, the Sword of Burial of Heaven flew continuously. It had already crossed 2 regions and entered the Icy Pine region. This place was in the north of the continent. It was still 4 regions away from the Golden Rock tribe's 9 mystical caves. Simply put, Tianxing was already more than halfway to the 9 mystical caves. At this moment, he had already been in the distorted space-time and focused on refining pills for an entire year. After more than 360 days of refining, the 9-turn star rhythm pill was finally completed. Swoosh! When the 9 heaven cauldron opened, 9 streaks of crimson red, dark green, and dark gold divine light shot up into the sky. There were actually the roars of dragons and phoenixes from within the divine cauldron. The sun and moon rotated in the sky, and billions of stars flickered. An extremely vast and mighty aura surged out from the divine cauldron. The surging divine power aura also spread out from the divine cauldron. When the space was distorted, it swept up 5 colored air waves. Under such a phenomenon, a thumb-sized pill with dazzling starlight slowly rose up. Chapter 3658. Based on the color, texture, pill patterns, medicinal efficacy, and charm, they are all top-notch. Under the blood flame sacred tree, Ji Tianxing held the 9 revolutions star rhyme pill in his hand and carefully observed it, revealing a gratified smile. Even though he had the strength of the 6th king god layer, he was still able to refine the 9 turns stellar rhythm pellet. This caused his divine power and mind to be greatly exhausted. Now, his divine power was exhausted, and his mind was exhausted. Furthermore, the time required to concoct this pill was also slightly longer. It took an entire year. But this was the first time he refined the 9 revolutions star rhyme pill in his life, and he succeeded without a hitch. Moreover, the 9 revolutions stellar rhyme pill that was refined was of exceptional quality. This was enough to make him feel gratified and satisfied. It's a pity that my strength has increased explosively in the past year. My progress is too fast, and I'm afraid that my foundation will be shaky. If he were to consume the 9 turns stellar rhyme pellet now, even if he could reach the peak of the 6th heavenly god realm, it would be hard for him to break through the bottleneck and reach the 7th heavenly god realm. On the contrary, it will further exacerbate the problem of a weak foundation, leading to problems in subsequent cultivation. Ji Tianxing held the 9 revolutions star rhyme pill and frowned for a while before putting it into a treasure box and storing it in his space ring. Forget it, I should consolidate my strength first. It won't be too late to take this pill after my foundation is solid. Ji Tianxing put away the divine pellet and the 9 heavens divine cauldron. He flew up into the void and circled around the Shui Yen sacred tree. After observing everyone's cultivation, he received a few more pieces of good news. First, it was Lin Shui, Sir God Blood Illusion, and the rest. Their powers had increased tremendously and they were improving rapidly. In the past, they had cultivated in the divine battleship. The environment and resources there were very ordinary. Now, under the distorted space-time and the blood flame sacred tree, the cultivation environment could be said to be excellent, and the resources were endless. It was only natural for them to increase their strength quickly. Ji Tianxing looked at Monarch God Blood Illusion, who was at the 9th level of the Divine Monarch realm, and then looked at the towering blood flame sacred tree. A thoughtful look flashed across his eyes. The second piece of good news was that White Dragon, Black Dragon, Qian Yu, and Wu Shuang already reached the 9th level Divine Lord realm. Currently, they were cultivating diligently to strengthen their foundations and prepare to break through to the Divine King realm. Ever since they had followed Ji Tianxing into the God world, they rarely had the chance to show their faces. They spent almost all of their time cultivating in the distorted space-time, desperately improving their strength. Even if there were times when he was tired from training and encountered bottlenecks and shackles, he could only move around in the distorted space-time and communicate with others and confide in them. This was because Ji Tianxing had once said that only when they reached the God King realm would they have the qualifications to roam the God world. And now they were not far from the Divine King realm. As for the Zhen Hong who improved the slowest, he also reached peak 8th level Divine Lord and was still silently working hard. The third piece of good news was that Ji Ku, Yun Yao, and Lan Er had all broken through. Lan Er had been stuck at the first tier of the Divine King realm for many years. She then cultivated in the distorted space for dozens of years before she successfully broke through to the second tier of the Divine King realm. But Ji Ku and Yun Yao were different. They were already at the 3rd level of the God King realm. Both of them had their own fortuitous encounters and inheritances, except for the time when they were trying to break through to the God King realm. After reaching the God King realm, they no longer had any restrictions or bottlenecks, and their strength soared all the way. Such an exaggerated speed of improvement gave even Ji Tianxing a shock, let alone Chao Qingyu and Yang. These two people's improvement was relatively slow, and they had not broken through yet. However, they were not in a hurry and felt that it was normal. Which God-King powerhouse in this world did not spend hundreds or thousands of years before they could break through to the next tier. Only Ji Tianxing's family was not normal, and that was why they were so terrifying. After checking on everyone's situation, Ji Tianxing went to visit Peng Fei and Bai Feng. These two people had been circulating their energy to recuperate for so long, and their injuries had mostly recovered. They were still recuperating in peace. Ji Tianxing did not disturb them. After secretly checking on the situation, he quietly left. Next, he used divine telekinesis voice transmission to converse with Buried Heaven. Burial of Heaven, where are we now? Burial of Heaven's voice quickly sounded in his mind. We just entered the freezing pine region today, and we are still far from the 9 mystical caves heaven. We still need about half a month. The situation was in line with Ji Tianxing's expectations. He asked again, "Have there been any abnormalities in the past few days?" Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then answered, "When we passed by the cities of the various regions and empires, we heard some rumors. The God-King powerhouses of the surrounding regions have all appeared recently, as if they are looking for something. There are also many top factions that have sent large groups of powerhouses to search for something." When Ji Tianxing stayed in the Sword World and entered the Divine Pagoda to cultivate, Burial of Heaven traveled alone. Everyone's safety was tied to it. Therefore, it became especially cautious and vigilant. It normally would not fly at full speed, and would constantly monitor the situation within tens of thousands of miles while traveling. If there was any movement or abnormality, it would be able to discover it in advance and inform Ji Tianxing. In this way, it passed through 2 regions and countless empires and cities, and naturally gathered some information. However, it did not stop to specifically scout for information, so it was not clear about the specific situation. Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a moment, then said calmly, "The world is too big, and many things happen every day. Perhaps some divine weapon or treasure has appeared in the world, provoking those powerhouses to fight over it. In short, it has nothing to do with us." At this moment, Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then suddenly said with a strange tone, "This matter is a little strange, and it might have something to do with us. There are people in front. Should we ask about the situation?" Ji Tianxing was startled for a moment, then hurriedly used his mind to communicate with Burial of Heaven. From Burial of Heaven's perspective, he scouted the surrounding tens of thousands of miles. He immediately saw that Burial of Heaven was flying above the vast sea of clouds. Below the sea of clouds was a boundless primordial forest, dark green and green, surrounded by clouds and smoke. And in the sky 20,000 miles ahead, there was a dark golden majestic divine warship, flying toward them as fast as lightning. Although the divine warship had a strange shape, and there were pictures and emblems engraved on it. However, after careful observation, Ji Tianxing did not recognize which powerhouse it was, or which faction it belonged to. At the same time, he released his divine sense to envelop the divine warship, wanting to investigate the situation inside. In the end, it turned out to be a king-level high-grade divine warship, protected by a powerful divine array that blocked all probing. Thus, he had Burial of Heaven change direction, avoiding the divine warship, and probing the other party's intentions. Unexpectedly, the divine warship also changed direction and accelerated to intercept Burial of Heaven. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed with a cold light and he muttered to himself, "It looks like they're coming for me. I didn't show myself, and they only saw Burial of Heaven. This is most likely not without reason, and it's very likely that there's a previous grudge that hasn't been resolved." Thinking of this, he thought of Tao Yongxing and Shueshang, and could not help but frown. Those two fellows have already sworn a heavenly oath, so how dare they continue to pester me? Chapter 36:59. It was a pity that the sword of Burial of Heaven was only a mid-grade king-grade sword. The majestic dark gold divine ship was a high-grade king-grade divine artifact. In comparison, the speed of the Sword of Burial of Heaven was obviously slower. Both parties had only chased for 10,000 miles when the Sword of Burial of Heaven was caught up by the divine ship. The Sword of Burial of Heaven wanted to start the battle immediately. No matter who was in the divine ship, it would attack them first. However, Ji Tianxing used his divine thought to ask the Sword of Burial of Heaven to stop in the sky and observe the situation. As expected, the divine ship stopped in front of the Sword of Burial of Heaven. Swoosh! Swoosh! A divine light flashed and more than 30 demon clan godly monarchs of different shapes flew out of the divine ship. Most of these godly monarchs had obvious racial characteristics. They were holding sabers, spears, swords, halberds, and various other weapons. They quickly spread out and surrounded the Sword of Burial of Heaven. Immediately after, the divine warship was put away, and 4 powerful and dignified God-King powerhouses appeared. Swoosh! The burly Kuei Cow Man was surrounded by purple lightning. He was more than 10 feet tall, and was the leader of the God-Kings. He was wearing a pitch-black divine armor, and carried a dark purple divine hammer the size of a millstone on his back. He exuded a fierce and domineering aura. His strength had already reached the upper-level God-King realm. He was at the 7th-level God-King realm. The other 3 God-King experts were from the Bear Clan, the Wolf Clan, and the Tiger Clan. Their physiques and appearances were different. However, their strengths were similar. They were all 6th-level God-Kings. Such a force, placed anywhere on the Starsource continent, would be a top-notch force. Even an ordinary domain master might not be comparable to them. However, Ji Tianxing secretly sized them up. He did not recognize the 4 God-King experts, nor could he tell their identities and backgrounds. The Sword of Burial of Heaven floated in the sky quietly and motionlessly. More than 30 god monarchs surrounded it as though they were facing a great enemy. They were on high alert. The 4 God-Kings stared at the Sword of Burial of Heaven for a long time before sneering complacently. The Tiger Race God-King with the character King on his forehead stroked his beard and sneered, "Sect Master, our luck is still good." Previously, in Winter Pine Imperial City, those fellows were still high and mighty, each of them solemnly swearing that they would be the first to find Long Tian. "I didn't think that the heavens would favor our scorching sun sect, and let us find it first." The other God-King of the Wolf Clan had a smug look in his dark green eyes. He said in a sinister tone, "Our sect master is a person of great fortune. The heavens naturally favor him." This brat used all his tricks to evade the encirclement and interception of countless forces and experts, but in the end, he still fell into our hands. Perhaps this is his fate. The stocky God-King of the Bear Race sneered coldly and said in a low, muffled voice, "It was not in vain that we used the entire sect's manpower and spent hundreds of millions of resources to buy this crucial piece of information. We will soon see the returns." It was obvious that these 3 God-Kings were elders of the Scorching Sun sect. Their leader, the God Race male wearing black armor and carrying a divine hammer on his back, was the Scorching Sun sect's sect master. The Scorching Sun sect master did not show any signs of complacency when he heard the 3's praises. He carefully examined the Sword of Burial of Heaven for a moment before saying in a low voice, "The appearance, details, and aura of this sword are the same as described in the bounty. This should be Long Tian's sword. Long Tian should be hiding in this sword. I didn't think that this brat would be as arrogant as the rumors say." He offended the 10,000 Demon Alliance and revealed his sword, but he did not hide it and even used this sword to travel. How confident! When the 3 God-Kings heard this, they were about to mock and ridicule him. However, the Scorching Sun sect master said with a serious expression, "From this, it can be seen that this Long Tian's strength and methods are extraordinary. Furthermore, someone who dares to offend the 10,000 Demon Alliance must be a peak expert. Everyone, do not let down your guard. Treat this with caution." The three god kings hurriedly put away their joking expressions and cupped their hands together in obeisance. At this moment, Ji Tianqing, who was in the sword world, heard the conversation between the Scorching Sun Sect Master and the three god kings clearly. He immediately frowned as a cold light flashed through his eyes. Scorching Sun Sect? 10,000 Demon Alliance? Bounty? Naturally, he understood the meaning of the words bounty. However, he had never heard of the Scorching Sun Sect or the 10,000 Demon Alliance. Thus, he hurriedly used his consciousness to contact Peng Fei, who was recuperating in the Divine Tower, and asked about the 10,000 Demon Alliance's history and background. Peng Fei was focused on recuperating when he suddenly heard Ji Tianqing's voice and the words, 10,000 Demon Alliance. He immediately woke up. Senior, didn't we have a grudge with the Cheongqi and Taotai clans? Why is the 10,000 Demon Alliance involved? When did you offend the 10,000 Demon Alliance? The 10,000 Demon Alliance is one of the top superforces in the Starsource continent. They have peak god kings. Peng Fei's tone was filled with shock and deep worry. Evidently, the 10,000 Demon Alliance was extremely famous. Even the 9 Mystical Paradise, Nebula Paradise, and Star-Devouring Paradise could not afford to offend them. Ji Tianqing was also confused, so he asked Peng Fei to give him a simple introduction of the 10,000 Demon Alliance. Only after Peng Fei's explanation did he understand what kind of existence the 10,000 Demon Alliance was. At this moment, the Scorching Sun Sect Master and the three God Kings had run out of patience. They were anxious from waiting and all began to call out, Long Tian, I am the Sect Master of the Scorching Sun Sect. I have come on the 10,000 Demon Alliance's bounty to take your life. Do you plan on hiding in the sword forever? The Scorching Sun Sect Master asked coldly as he looked at the Sword of Burial of Heaven expressionlessly. The God King of the Wolf Clan sneered and mocked. Right now, your name and deeds are being spread across the 30 or so regions of the continent. It's said that you've killed many people of the Cheongqi and Taotai clans and have a deep grudge with the 10,000 Demon Alliance. Since you're so arrogant and despotic, why are you acting like a coward now? The God King of the Tiger clan stroked his beard and sneered disdainfully. It must be our sect master's peerless might that has scared you silly, right? Ha ha ha, or perhaps you're seriously injured and are hiding in the sword to heal yourself, so you don't dare to show yourself? Their cold laughter echoed in the sky. The Scorching Sun Sect Master secretly gave him a look and sent a message. Long Tian is arrogant and despotic. He's cruel and bloodthirsty. He's definitely not a patient person. If he keeps hiding in the sword and doesn't show himself, he must be seriously injured and weak. This is such a good opportunity. We'll destroy his sword and force him to show himself. Then, we'll work together to kill him. We'll grind his bones to dust and take his godhead and belongings back to the 10,000 Demon Alliance for the reward. Third Elder, remember to use a photographic crystal to record the scene of us killing Long Tian and grinding his bones to dust. Take the evidence to the 10,000 Demon Alliance. Only then will they happily pay. The God King of the Wolf Clan smiled coldly. He bowed slightly and sent a message. Yes, Sect Master. Chapter 3660. The Broken Sun Sect Master and the three elders didn't act rashly. They surrounded the Sword of Burial of Heaven and waited for Ji Tianqing to show himself. At the same time, they secretly used divine powers and secret techniques to form a sealing array that sealed off the area within 10,000 miles. This way, they could block out divine sense and seal off all movement and shadows. Not only did they have to kill Ji Tianqing, but they also had to guard against other forces who saw the abnormality and came to interfere. Only the Broken Sun Sect could do this. Soon, the sealing formation was completed, and the time it took for an incense stick to burn had passed. The Sword of Burial of Heaven still didn't move. Ji Tianqing still didn't show himself. The three elders couldn't wait any longer. They told the Broken Sun Sect Master to destroy the sword immediately. The Broken Sun sect master was about to nod. At this moment, a white light flashed across the sword of burial of heaven. A young man from the dragon tribe in a white robe finally appeared in the sky, his entire body radiating golden light. Whoosh! He stood proudly with the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand. He glanced at the Broken Sun sect master and the others and smiled coldly. The Cheongchi and Taotai races were bullied and didn't dare to take revenge, so they asked the 10,000 Beast Alliance for help and even issued a bounty? The Broken Sun sect master and the three elders were stunned when they saw that Ji Tianxing was unharmed and had a powerful aura and mysterious strength. Immediately after, they all took out their divine weapons and stared at Ji Tianxing with vigilance. Even though they said it casually, they were just trying to encourage themselves. They knew that Long Tian was very strong, and they had to fight him with all their might. The Broken Sun sect master stared at Long Tian and asked, "If that's the case, do you admit that you're Long Tian?" Ji Tianxing sneered calmly. "That's right. I'm Long Tian. Why wouldn't I admit it?" The Broken Sun sect master nodded. "Very good. Even though we want to kill you, I still have to say that you're very courageous." Ji Tianxing didn't want to waste time with him. He said in a deep voice, "Let me see the bounty of the Myriad Demon Alliance." The sect master of the Scorching Sun sect sneered, "After I kill you, I'll take the bounty to the 10,000 Demon Alliance. How can I show it to you?" Ji Tianxing frowned and asked again, "How much is the bounty of the Myriad Demon Alliance?" The Tiger Race Divine King curled his mouth and said with a cold laugh, "You brat, your death is at hand and you're actually still concerned about the price of the bounty? 2 king-grade high-grade divine artifacts and 50 billion divine stones. If I grind your bones to dust, I'll add another 5 billion god stones. Ha ha. Kid, this is the most expensive bounty in the last few hundred years. You should be proud that you were killed today." Ji Tianxing frowned and was silent. He thought to himself, "I have no grudge against the Myriad Demon Alliance. They can't possibly offer so much wealth as a bounty for me. Tao Yongxing must have asked the 10,000 Demon Alliance for help because he hates me so much. Haha. I thought I could force them to swear a heavenly oath and this would be the end of the matter. I didn't expect Tao Yongxing to keep pestering me. He didn't dare to take revenge himself, so he used such a despicable method. If I knew this would happen, I would have been ruthless and destroyed the star-devouring cave." The sect master of the Scorching Sun sect and the 3 divine kings saw his gloomy face and silence. They immediately grinned coldly. "Haha, kid, now you know fear? To tell you the truth, the bounty of the Myriad Demon Alliance has spread throughout the 32 northwestern regions. Right now, there are at least a few dozen top forces and more than 100 God King experts who are trying to kill you. However, you have nothing to worry about. Those forces and experts won't have a chance. Just die under our blades and everything will be over." As they spoke, the 4 experts revealed sinister sneers as they raised their swords and sabers one after another. The 30 or so god monarchs around them also crazily gathered their divine power and surged with murderous intent. A great battle was about to break out. Ji Tianxing stood with his sword in hand as he sneered mockingly, "The Scorching Sun sect. I've never heard of this name before. It must be a sect that has risen in the past 1,000 years, right? There shouldn't be many sects of this scale and foundation on the Star Source continent. A top force is willing to sacrifice the future of their entire sect for a mere 50 billion god stones and 2 high king-grade divine artifacts. Don't you want to reconsider?" Hearing this, the sect master of the Scorching Sun sect and the 3 elders were stunned. Then the 3 elders laughed as if they had heard the funniest joke in the world. "Ha ha ha ha. If you're afraid of death, just admit defeat and surrender. Why do you have to be so tactful? Humph. You're about to die and you're still putting on airs? If we kill you, not only will we be able to easily obtain resources and treasures worth hundreds of billions, we'll also be favored by the 10,000 Demon Alliance. This is definitely a great deal. Alright, Long Tion, let's cut the crap. We'll send you on your way now. The Scorching Sun sect was a rather famous top force in the northwestern region. It was a pity that it was still a small shrimp compared to the behemoth that was the 10,000 Demon Alliance. Treasures and treasures worth hundreds of billions were tempting. However, winning the favor and support of the 10,000 Demon Alliance was what the Scorching Sun sect wanted the most. Kill him! The sect master of the Scorching Sun sect waved his sleeves and raised his hammer as he gave the order. Instantly, over 30 Sir God powerhouses brandished their weapons without any regard for their own safety. They used all sorts of divine abilities and ultimate skills to besiege Ji Tianxing. The sect master of the Scorching Sun sect and the 3 elders held their weapons tightly and were ready to attack. Once Ji Tianxing was fighting with the god monarchs and revealed even the slightest flaw, they would launch a thunderous attack. However, they miscalculated. Ji Tianxing didn't move at all as the divine lords charged at him. Even though the sky was filled with divine light and shadows, he didn't even look at them. Even when the divine lords were close, he didn't draw his sword. He only smiled disdainfully. Buzz! An invisible divine soul power suddenly burst out of his body and turned into transparent ripples that spread in all directions. Bang, 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 bang! In the next moment, an invisible divine soul shockwave swept out in all directions, striking more than 30 divine lord experts. Following a series of muffled sounds, the bodies of the 30-odd Sir Gods shook violently. Their heads exploded and blood splattered everywhere. They didn't even have time to scream before their divine souls were destroyed and their divine heads shattered. They died on the spot. Plop, plop, more than 30 divine lords fell from the sky like dumplings, causing the ground to shake and dust to fly everywhere. It was only at this moment that the divine arts that were falling from the sky landed on Ji Tianxing's body one after another. The surface of his body glowed with a faint golden light, which condensed into a transparent light shield. Despite being bombarded by dozens of divine light shadows, the light shield remained unaffected, not even the slightest bit affected. Just like that, Ji Tianxing stood where he was without moving. He didn't even lift a finger and instantly killed more than 30 Sir God. The sect master of the Scorching Sun sect and the 3 elders widened their eyes in shock. Chapter 36-61. He's actually so valiant? Our sect's 30 over-elites. He didn't even lift a finger and they were all killed? This lad is indeed terrifying. The 3 elders' expressions changed drastically as they gulped and their hearts were filled with terror. They were also God King experts and each of them had the ability and means to kill 30 over God Monarch. But they had to go through a bloody battle and at least display a few moves before they could do it. On the other hand, Ji Tianxing didn't even lift a finger or unsheathe his sword. Just a single soul attack was enough to kill 30 over God Monarch. Such ability and means were extremely terrifying. In an instant, Sect Master and the 3 elders were stunned as they forgot to attack. Especially the 3 elders, their backs were drenched in cold sweat as they suddenly regretted accepting this mission. At this moment, Ji Tianxing looked at them with a smile and opened his mouth. Originally, you guys were here to kill this king and this battle was baffling. But since you insist on sending yourselves to your deaths, how can this king not grant you your wish? 1 7th stage realm, 3 6th stage realm. Although the quality isn't good, but it's still not bad. It's comparable to 100 years of cultivation. As he said that, he slowly raised the sword of burial of heaven as he started to accumulate God power in his body. Sect Master and the 3 elders instantly panicked as their gazes darted around and their hearts trembled. The clumsy Bear Clan elder couldn't help but ask, the quality isn't good and it's comparable to 100 years of cultivation? What does he mean? Wolf Clan elder's gaze was chilly as he said in a low voice, perhaps he wants to eat us and absorb our powers? Tiger Clan elder cursed angrily, this bastard, how dare he belittle us? Just 100 years of cultivation? we've all cultivated for tens of thousands of years." Without waiting for Tiger Clan Elder to finish his words, Ji Tianxing had already made his move. Heavenly Dragon World / Dragon Elephant God Fist. Ji Tianxing suddenly took a step forward as his left fist punched out a huge dragon elephant image, while his right hand slashed out 1,000 feet long golden dragon sword light. In an instant, the roars of dragons and tigers exploded in the sky, deafening everyone. The ferocious dragon elephant fist contained the divine power of 300 laws, and it instantly enveloped the cruel Sun Sect master along with the divine patterns and shadows of laws. As for the 1,000 zhang long saber light that resembled the roar of a golden dragon, it unleashed a might that could cleave apart the heavens and earth as it slashed towards the Tiger God King. Boom! With a thunderous boom, the cruel Sun Sect master was the first to be sent flying. Even though he had used all his strength to cast his ultimate skill, he still couldn't block the draconic elephant divine fist. Blood spurted out of his 7 orifices, and his chest caved in. He flew backward for 300 miles before he finally stopped. Boom! Another muffled explosion erupted. The Tiger Tribe God Monarch's all-out defensive divine ability was instantly sliced apart by the golden dragon saber light. His entire body was split into 2 halves by the saber light. Divine blood spurted out and splashed across the sky. When the corpse fell from the sky and smashed into the ground, there was no more sound. Even his godhead had been sliced into pieces and scattered across the sky. He had died just like that. A dignified 6th-degree realm god king was actually killed by Ji Tianxing in one strike. The Bear Tribe and Wolf Tribe's god kings saw this with their own eyes and were instantly scared out of their wit. They fled in panic. 300 miles away, the severely injured cruel Sun Sect master was also filled with fear and had thoughts of retreating. Before meeting Long Tian, they were already mentally prepared and knew that Long Tian was very powerful. But when they truly fought with Long Tian, they realized that this wasn't called being very strong, this was called being terrifyingly strong. Even if the bounty was 500 billion, they wouldn't do it, let alone 50 billion. No amount of resources or treasures was more important than their lives. Seeing the cruel Sun Sect master and the 2 elders fleeing in panic, Ji Tianxing's figure flashed as he teleported beside them and began to chase after them. "Since you're here, then stay here." Swoosh! Ji Tianxing shouted coldly as he slashed the burial of heaven at the Wolf Tribe's God King with all his might. Heaven-piercing sword. The sacred sword light that was thousands of feet long carried the divine power of hundreds of laws as it exploded with a divine power that could destroy everything. It slashed through the sky and struck the Wolf Tribe's God King. Kaboom! With a thunderous explosion, the sword light destroyed all obstacles and killed the Wolf Tribe's God King on the spot, shattering his bones. No matter if it was a divine power or a protective divine armor, they were all useless. After killing the Wolf Tribe's God King in one strike, Ji Tianxing's figure flashed again and he caught up with the Bear Tribe's God King. The Bear Tribe's God King had just escaped to the edge of the ceiling array and was about to escape from danger. However, Ji Tianxing slashed out with the sword of spacetime and created a crack in the void that was tens of thousands of feet long, shattering him into pieces. No matter how he tried to escape, the sword of spacetime had already sealed the space and he couldn't move at all. He could only wait for death. In an instant, the Bear Tribe's God King was also shattered into pieces as his divine spark exploded and he died on the spot. While Ji Tianxing killed the 3 elders, the heavily injured cruel Sun Sect master escaped from the ceiling array in a wretched state. Whoosh! He flew into the blue sky and rushed to the top of the sea of clouds as fast as he could. He flew into the sky above the vast sea of clouds and was about to take out the divine ship to continue escaping. At this moment, a white light flashed before him, and Ji Tianxing appeared out of nowhere. Whoosh! A dazzling sword light expanded and instantly struck the cruel Sun Sect master. He couldn't dodge in time, and could only activate his protective divine light to the limit to block it with all his might. Kaboom! However, it was a pity that the protective divine light was shattered instantly. The king-level high-level divine armor he wore was also dented by the sword light. It became even more tattered. He was sent flying again. His face was covered in blood as he crashed miserably into the sea of clouds. With the king-level high-quality divine armor protecting him, he wasn't killed instantly and luckily survived. However, before he could escape again, Ji Tianxing appeared before him and placed the cold burial of heaven against his neck. Whoosh! The cruel Sun Sect Master instinctively closed his eyes and waited for death to descend. However, the Heaven Burial's sword stopped at his shoulder. The blade was only half an inch away from his neck, but it did not slash down. The cruel Sun Sect Master was stunned. He opened his eyes and looked at Ji Tianxing. Why didn't you kill me? Are you going to spare my life? Suddenly realizing something, the cruel Sun Sect Master was overjoyed and emotional. However, Ji Tianxing extinguished his fantasies. Take out your communication jade slip and send a message to the other forces, he said emotionlessly. Report your location and results. The cruel Sun Sect Master was stunned. He couldn't quite react. Report truthfully? Then won't the other forces swarm over and you'll be killed soon? I get it. You want me to fake the news and say that you've been killed so that others won't chase after you, right? The cruel Sun Sect Master thought he was smart and guessed Ji Tianxing's intentions. However, Ji Tianxing denied it. Report truthfully. Only in this way will they continue to send themselves to their deaths once they know of my whereabouts. Chapter 36-62. Ah! The scorching Sun Sect Master was dumbfounded. He stared at Ji Tianxing in a daze, not understanding what he meant. Even though he had witnessed and experienced Ji Tianxing's terrifying strength with his own eyes, he was still shocked. However, he still could not understand why Ji Tianxing would expose himself and attract the attention of countless factions and experts. Was this guy tired of living? It seemed like he had just said that they knew where he was, which was why they kept coming to their deaths? The scorching Sun Sect Master's body trembled when he thought of this, and unparalleled fear surged out of his heart. Heavens! He's actually so arrogant! At this moment, the scorching Sun Sect Master suddenly understood Ji Tianxing's intentions. He was not seeking his own death. He wanted to lure all the factions and experts over and kill them all. Madman! This Long Tian was definitely a madman. The scorching Sun Sect Master roared in his heart. His mind and body were filled with fear and he trembled. Out of instinct, he wanted to shake his head and refuse. However, the bone-chilling killing intent from the pitch-black sword beside his neck cleared his mind. He knew very well what would happen if he didn't do as he was told. Thus, he took out a communication jade slip with trembling hands and sent a message to an elder of the 10,000 Demon Alliance to report the details. After sending the message, he seemed to feel that it was not enough. He took out a few more communication jade slips and sent messages to the other factions. This way, the news that he and the three elders had tried to kill Long Tian but were killed instead would quickly spread. Out of selfishness and ulterior motives, he even said in the communication jade slip that Long Tian had also been severely injured and was fleeing north. After he sent the message, Ji Tianxing's cold voice sounded in his ears again. You lied that I was severely injured and was fleeing north because you wanted those factions to hurry over so that I could kill them one by one. This way, many factions in the northwestern regions would be heavily injured. Even if you were killed and the scorching Sun Sect's strength was greatly weakened, at least we would have a chance to breathe and not be swallowed up by those factions. Hearing this cold and indifferent voice, the setting Sun Sect Master's body stiffened and his expression became rather ugly. After a moment of silence, he smiled bitterly and said, As expected, I can't hide anything from you. But this won't do you any harm, and it won't affect your plan, will it? Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said expressionlessly, "That's right. To be precise, what you are doing is equivalent to helping this prince." The Setting Sun Sect Master immediately became excited. Joy appeared on his face as he said with anticipation, "Long Tian, I've already guessed your plan and believe in your strength. As long as you spare my life, I will cooperate fully with you. Whether it's acting or helping you deceive others, I can." Evidently, the cruel Sun Sect Master's desire to live was very strong. He would not let go of any chance of survival. However, Ji Tianxing decisively rejected him. No need. With that, he did not give the sect master of the cruel Sun sect a chance to speak. The sword of burial of heaven suddenly shone with resplendent light. Shwa! Blood splattered as the Setting Sun sect master's head flew into the sky. His eyes were still wide open. After destroying the Setting Sun sect master's body, the sword of burial of heaven unleashed another resplendent beam of sword light. Bang! The Setting Sun sect master's head exploded. His godhead also shattered and fell from the sky. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and sent out two beams of golden light that swept away the Setting Sun sect master's godhead fragments and interspatial ring. Then, he returned to the ceiling formation and took away the godhead fragments and interspatial rings of the three elders. After obtaining his spoils of war, he did not clean up the battlefield. Instead, he flew away on the sword of burial of heaven. He did not change his route and continued to advance north. He did not change his method of travel. The sword of burial of heaven still flew high in the sky. He entered the sword world again and returned to the distorted spacetime to deal with his spoils of war. In just 4 hours, he finished counting his spoils of war. The Setting Sun sect master and the three elders all had vast amounts of cultivation resources and treasures in their interspatial rings. Unfortunately, there was only one upper king-level material and treasure. Even king-grade pills, materials, and treasures were not many in number. There were only a few hundred of them. Fortunately, the 4 god kings had stored enough god stones and materials, which comforted Ji Tianxing. He couldn't help but grumble as he stored all of their belongings into his spatial ring. The Setting Sun sect master and the 3 elders have less than 1 trillion in total. That's too shabby. Will they be attracted by the 100 billion reward and come out to kill me? Although Ji Tianxing was a bit disappointed by the wealth and resources worth 1 trillion. However, the 4 godhead fragments could provide him with 100 years of cultivation, which was a bit comforting. After counting his spoils of war, he refined the 4 godhead fragments and absorbed their god power and divine Tao laws. He was full of anticipation for the forces that were about to swarm him. Originally, he didn't want to start a massacre. However, he was entangled with all kinds of grudges. Countless forces and experts were trying to kill him by any means necessary. Since that was the case, he could only turn trash into treasure and make the experts become his resources. The Setting Sun sect master's message quickly spread among the 10,000 demon alliance and countless forces. If the Setting Sun sect master had only sent a message to the 10,000 demon alliance, perhaps the 10,000 demon alliance would have kept it a secret and secretly sold this information to make a fortune. However, the Setting Sun sect master had sent a message to many forces, and the news quickly spread. The 10,000 demon alliance could not hide it even if they wanted to. In just one day, 70 to 80 forces and over 100 god kings knew about Long Tian's whereabouts and the news of the Setting Sun sect master and the others being killed. Although many people were shocked by Long Tian's strength and ability to kill the Setting Sun sect master and the 3 elders, they did not fear or retreat. However, they didn't shrink back because of this, and they became even more enthusiastic and excited instead. All of them rushed towards Freezing Pine region at their fastest speed to kill Long Tian. This was because many forces and experts believed that they were stronger than the Setting Sun sect. Long Tian could kill the 4 god kings of the Setting Sun sect, but he definitely could not kill them. Even those who were weaker than the Setting Sun sect rushed to the Freezing Pine territory to claim the credit. The Setting Sun sect master had clearly revealed a piece of information. Although the 3 elders were killed, he was definitely going to die as well. However, Long Tion's fate was also very bad. He was heavily injured and weak. This piece of information was extremely important. Many forces that were hesitating and watching in the dark joined the army to kill Long Tion. For a time, the entire northwestern region was in chaos. Over 100 forces and close to 200 god kings moved. Everyone rode their divine ships, mounts, and various divine artifacts to the Freezing Pine territory. They were afraid that others would beat them to it. Those who participated in the assassination thought about the reward worth hundreds of billions and the praise and favor of the 10,000 Demon Alliance. No one knew what awaited them. Chapter 36-63. A day passed quickly. The Sword of Burial of Heaven was in the south of the Frost Pine region and was about to enter the Azure Pine Empire's territory. At this moment, Ji Tianxing had been cultivating in seclusion for 50 days in the distorted spacetime. He had refined and absorbed the divine fragment of the Cruel Sun sect master and the 3 elders. Not only had his strength increased, but he had also gained a few more divine Tao laws. After refining the divine fragment, he did not stop cultivating. He continued to nourish his divine Tao foundation. However, at this moment, the Sword of Burial of Heaven slowed down and stopped in the sky. It was surrounded by a sea of clouds and an endless plain below. In front of the Sword of Burial of Heaven, there were more than 20 divine lords in a battle formation. They were Kenshin soldiers and were filled with killing intent. At the front of the battle formation were 3 divine kings. They were all holding strange weapons and had cold smiles on their faces. It was clear that the first group of assassins had arrived after the Cruel Sun sect master spread the news. Long Tion, stop hiding in the divine sword and come out to die. I don't know if I should call you arrogant or stupid. The news of your battle with the Cruel Sun sect master has already spread throughout the regions. I didn't think that you would continue to use your sword without any disguise. Ha ha ha. Even if you are a noble member of the dragon race, even if you are powerful, it is useless now. You are already heavily injured. Stretch out your neck and die. The 3 godly kings of the monster clan of different races and appearances shouted loudly as they spread out and surrounded the Heaven Burier sword. At this moment, the Sword of Burial of Heaven used its divine sense to awaken Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation without hesitation and left the distorted spacetime. It has only been a day, and someone has already come to die. It looks like I will be busy for a few days and won't have time to rest. As this thought flashed through his mind, Ji Tianxing appeared in the sky. He had a proud expression as he held the Sword of Burial of Heaven. His body flashed with golden light as divine power gathered in his body. The 3 divine kings stared at him for a moment and were shocked to see that he was safe and sound. You are not injured? This is impossible. You were clearly heavily injured by the sect master of the Cruel Sun sect and the others, and your strength is weak. He must be faking it, bluffing. Don't be afraid. The 3 divine kings were filled with vigilance and were secretly on guard. They were just about to report their identities and origins to further probe Ji Tianxing's background. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianxing didn't waste any time. He didn't even ask about their origins and backgrounds, and directly swung his sword to kill them. 10 directions, absolute shadows. Dazzling white light burst out from his body as 6 clones appeared in an instant. They scattered in the sky and surrounded the god kings and god monarch. Then, his original body and the 6 clones all wielded the Sword of Burial of Heaven and used different divine abilities to surround and kill. Heaven Cleaving Sword, 7-Star Sword, Broken Moon Sword, Dragon Elephant Divine Fist, Sword Through Heaven, 10,000 swords returned to origin. In an instant, a dazzling rainbow light shone and enveloped an area of 10,000 miles. The crisscrossing sharp sword auras carried an unparalleled power and sword intent as they shot toward the 3 god kings and more than 20 god monarchs. A one-sided massacre with a great disparity in power began. Bang bang bang! Rumble rumble rumble! Run! In the next moment, a deafening explosion of thunder and miserable howls of despair erupted in the sky, resounding through the clouds. In just one breath, the 20 mid-level and high-level god monarchs were all killed and turned into ashes. 2 seconds later, the 3 god kings were killed by the 7 Ji Tianqing on the spot. All of them were crushed and their divine heads were shattered. The battle quickly ended. 10 seconds later, the deafening explosions and the light of the divine arts that covered the sky quickly dissipated. Everything returned to normal. Other than the ruins, there were also corpses, remains and blood in the ruins, which proved that a great battle had taken place here. The sword of burial of heaven continued to fly north at the same speed as before. Ji Tianqing returned to the distorted space-time to count the spoils of war. 4 hours later, he finished counting the spoils of war. A 7th level high-level god king and 2 5th and 6th level mid-level god kings. The total wealth of the 3 of them is only about 600 billion. Why are they even poorer than the Broken Sun sect? Let's hope that the people who come to die later will be stronger and have stronger families. Ji Tianqing put away the spoils of war with disappointment and started to devour the divine head fragments. This time, it took less time to refine the divine head fragment. In merely half a month, he devoured 3 godhead fragments and seized 3 types of divine Tao laws. At this time, the sword of burial of heaven stopped again. The voice of the burial of heaven sounded in his mind again. Someone else is coming. Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation with a trace of anticipation and left the distorted space-time. A moment later, he appeared at the top of the sea of clouds, holding the sword of burial of heaven and looking at the people in front of him. There were more than 40 demon race experts in this group. Among them, there were 36 divine Lord Realm powerhouses. The other 5 were all divine kings. Divine Lord Realm monsters were all disregarded by Ji Tianqing. His gaze fell on the 5 god kings and sized them up expressionlessly. 2 high-level god kings and 3 mid-level god kings. Not bad, this is interesting. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself and thought, if these people are from the same faction, then this faction should be one of the top in the Starsource continent. Even if they are not as strong as the 10,000 Demon Alliance, they should at least be one of the top factions in the Northwest, one level higher than the Broken Sun sect. In fact, he had guessed correctly. The leader of the Moon Rhinoceros clan's God King stared coldly at Ji Tianqing. He said in a deep voice, Long Tian, your whereabouts have already been grasped by countless forces. Who knows how many God King experts are hunting you down? You are alone and heavily injured. You will die without a doubt. Don't make any meaningless struggles and resistance. Accept your death obediently. This credit belongs only to our Pill Sun Palace. This Moon Rhinoceros God King was the Vice Palace Master of the Pill Sun Palace and the second strongest person in the sect. His tone was full of confidence. The other 4 God Kings were also full of confidence. They looked at Ji Tianqing as if they were looking at a dead man. Ji Tianqing disdained to refute and was too lazy to explain anything. He did not waste any time and used his ultimate skill again to attack the people of the Pill Sun Palace. Absolute shadows of the 10 directions. With a cold shout, his body lit up with a dazzling white light and 6 doppelgangers appeared around him. In the next moment, he and the 6 doppelgangers waved the sword of burial of heaven and used different ultimate skills to attack. Heavenly Dragon Palm. Heavenly Dragon Slash. Blade of Spacetime. Sky-piercing Finger. Sword of Daytime. Suddenly, a dazzling 5-colored divine light illuminated the world. the destructive sword light and the divine power of hundreds of laws poured down on the people of the Pill Sun Palace. Book Guest House Reading Website.